What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto betrayed by Kami? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The ritual was coming to an end. All the members of Akatsuki looked on in anticipation as the ninth eye of the statue slowly started to open. The blonde-haired boy lay there, mouth open in a silent screams as the last of his energy started to wane. The Bijuu in the statue were panicking. Soon they would be reunited as the Jubi, however they will lose their consciousness in the process. Something these powerful demons could not accept, for losing their consciousness and emerge is akin to death, something these immortal beings could not accept. In the statue the demons were frantically discussing their course of action. Thought their options were limited, it's either imbue the mortal blonde with all their power, or die. The Kyuubi had grown accustomed to her host, so she wouldn't have a problem with it. The Nibi was great friends with Kyuubi, so she was okay with it as well. The problem was the Gobi and Sanbi. They were both hesitant, and all 9 were needed to override the seal. The problem was that if they wanted to live, all their powers would vanish into the blonde, making him an all-powerful being. Their souls however would remain, and the blonde could call them out whenever he wanted, and they would serve him. He could do whatever he wanted to, as he would be omnipotent, he would absorb all their knowledge and skills. In the end Gobi and Sanbi reluctantly agreed with the plan, muttering something about having no choice in the matter. The Akatsuki members were suddenly on guard as a loud rumble was heard. The statue shook and the dragon stopped moving. Suddenly all the pupils in the 9 eyes disappeared as a crack came right through the middle of the statue. A low-pitched buzzing suddenly increased in pitch, before a bright light came from the statue. 9 dragons in different colors flew into Naruto, his body destroying and reforming as his soul took in the 9 demon lords. He grew taller, his muscles grew more defined. The scars on his body simply disappeared, his muscles grew denser, his face grew slimmer. The signs of long periods without food disappeared, until suddenly in a bright flash of light a bright red shockwave spread out from Naruto, leaving behind an empty white void. Devoid of anything, except Naruto, laying on the ground in a peaceful sleep, his body pulsing with power as his mind and body evolved into that of a god. In Konoha, a tremble went through the entire village, a sudden oppressive energy flared through the air, as if 10 Kyuubis were attacking Konoha at once. People looked at the direction whence it came from, and the usually blue sky in that direction was replaced by bright white, as if light itself came rushing towards them. As everyone ran up the village walls they saw a red shockwave of pure energy rushing towards them at the speed of sound. The people of Konoha began to have trouble drawing breath as the air grew dense from the unimaginable energy rushing towards them. As the energy reached the village gates, all of the ninja could notice a familiar feeling to the energy. And Naruto? 20 seconds later nothing was left of Konoha. In 3 hours the entire realm had been lost, planets, solar systems, only the white void was left, and Naruto. He looked around, feeling immensely powerful, as well as sad. He felt like he had lost something but gained something much better. He had gained incredible amounts of knowledge in the space of minutes, and as such his whole mind was in shambles. He sat down on the bright floor and meditated, organizing all the data he had received. He learned the hidden memories of the Bijuu, knowing that they were originally one being, a god, more powerful than Kami, Yami and the Shinigami. He also learned that because the god grew arrogant and attacked the original gods, they worked together to exile him and split him into 9 beings, the Bijuu. Their hatred for the gods evolved into hatred for humans and they began committing random acts of mass destruction. He also learned that through the fusion he had now become a god. After organizing all this data he stood up, wondering what he should do to relieve eternal boredom. Suddenly a rift in the void appeared, and out of it stepped 2 attractive girls. Had he still been a human he would have passed out from a huge nosebleed. They were so beautiful that even those who hated perverts could not help but drool at the sight of these 2 girls. One had DD cups, long raven hair, with locks of scarlet in it, as well as revealing clothing that could only be described as lingerie with a see-through shirt over it, and a black leather miniskirt. The other had long blue hair, C-cups, and a sultry smile on her face. She had bright blue eyes with a hint of mischief in them. She was wearing a simple white dress that was hugging her body quite nicely, showing off her curves in a subtle way. The black-haired woman smirked and introduced herself as Yami, while the other smiled a sincere smile, although a hint of longing could be seen in her eyes, and introduced herself as Kami. Naruto simply smiled his foxy smile at them, causing both of them to blush. Kami and Yami, to what do I owe thee of meeting you two? Well, Naruto, you have just become a god. The fusing of the 9 separate tailed beasts recreated the godly powers that we split. We hope that you have a better personality than your predecessor. We had nothing else to do, so we decided to explain your newfound powers to you. Wait, you came here only because you were bored? Isn't it kind of the duty of gods to explain the powers to new gods? The two girls simply giggled merrily, and you could see the question marks above his head. Speaking of that, why isn't Shinigami here? Oh, your ascension doesn't interest him. As for your question, gods have no duty. As a god you can do whatever you want, however messing with the realms of the other gods is not advised, for if you do mess our realms up we will turn against you. Why would I want to mess your realms up? I'm not evil or something, just bored, and why do I interest you too if I may ask? Kami giggled and stepped towards Naruto, coming to stand right in front of him. Gods have no obligation to do anything. I created heaven because I was bored, and because I thought it would be nice to reward people who have been good in their lives, so instead of just disappearing after life I decided to conserve the good souls for heaven. As for why you interest us, we haven't had a young male being turned into a god for over 10,000 years. The Shinigami was old when he ascended. We find it below us to fraternize with mortals, so we're kinda lonely. Yami stepped toward Naruto as well, before beginning her story. I was once human and I was being raped my entire life. I was used over and over again, given just enough food to survive. I eventually went into shock from the sadness, so I created hell, and made the souls of every evil mortal suffer for eternity, especially the rapists. She spat out the last part, and began sobbing quietly, holding her face into her hands. She flinched as Naruto put his arms around her, before crying into his chest. He whispered small words into her ear. Relax, Yami-chan. No one can hurt you now, no one can rape you anymore. She stiffened in his arms for a minute, before grounding out through gritted teeth. What about you? He looked at her confused. What about me? You could still rape me if you wanted to. Your powers are greater than mine, remember? Yes, I could do that, but I would do it why? Kami looked at him in slight awe. He was denying that he would ever rape her, something no male god has ever done. Even Shinigami had pondered over it, but had decided against it. What's more was that she couldn't detect any insincerity in his voice, like he had truly never thought of it. Yami looked up in disbelief, before her shocked look turned into a glare. What are you talking about? I can feel that you want me. We are the most beautiful beings in existence. So? That doesn't mean I'm going to rape you. I hate rapists. If you had ever watched my hometown, you should have noticed that there are no live rapists in Konoha. This is because every time a human attempted to rape a woman, I killed him. It is true that I want the two of you. I would be crazy not to want you. But I won't rape, have nothing to worry about. I won't hurt you. He whispered into Yami's ear, but Kami could easily hear it. Kami resisted the urge to smile happily and glomp the new god. They had only gotten evil male gods for millions of years now. Kami watched. She knew what Yami was thinking, but she couldn't help but be jealous at the fact that the young god was not holding her. She would have to do something about that later, she mentally giggled. Yami relaxed into his arms, blushing at the words of the young god. From the corner of her eyes she saw Kami smiling happily. Yami, I have to go, alright. I'll leave you two alone, Kami chirped, while opening a rift and disappearing. Yami-chan? Naruto spoke softly to her, bringing her out of her reverie. She once again reveled in the warmth of a body pressed against her own. For the first time this feeling was not accompanied by great amounts of pain. She liked it, and would want to stay like this for hours. She sighed contentedly before answering the young god. Yes, Naru-kun? Would it be alright for me to hold you during the rest of the explanation, or do you wish me to let go of you? She was once again shocked. Never before had she been asked what she wanted. It gave her a warm feeling, like she was safe from any harm while she was with him. She decided she liked the feeling of his warm body pressed to hers. She especially liked the fact that for the first time she could feel a pleasurable feeling without being accompanied by such horrible pain. She decided to allow him to hold her close to him whenever he wanted to. No, Naru-kun, it's alright, I like this. Naruto couldn't help but feel bad for her. He knew it wasn't his fault that she had had such a horrible life, But he couldn't ignore the fact that it was his gender that had caused him all her pain. She didn't deserve all her suffering. Yami-chan, for what it's worth, I'm deeply ashamed that my gender has caused you all this pain. I can only hope that I can make you feel comfortable around me, because I know you can never forgive the male gender for all the horrors that have been forced upon you. And for what it's worth, even though I know that I cannot speak for all men since the vast majority would have gladly raped you, I'm sorry for what they've done to you. I hope you can forgive me for my gender's sins. Yami felt her heart flutter at the first apology she had ever received. No one had ever really cared for her past. Sure, they said it was horrible for her, but she could hear the insincerity in their voices. She could feel that they just wanted to get in her pants. Naruto just seemed to truly be ashamed at what she had gone through. It was unreal, but she had never met a nicer person than him. However, Yami-chan, don't think of me as the epitome of good. I'll probably bring many realms to shambles before I turn time back in that realm so I can restore the lives lost. She nodded. She knew that it was impossible for a god to do nothing evil. It was just way too boring to live forever if you can't find things to entertain yourself. She sometimes went on random bouts of destruction, and she couldn't turn back time like he could. She was essentially more evil than he was. It was time for the explanation. She could always figure out how to have him for herself later. Alright, Naruto-kun, the first thing you have to learn is to travel between different realms. While you're in a realm created by a god, you can't mess around with it as much, but you could still trash it with your massive power. If you go to a naturally existing realm, you could fuck around with the laws of physics, manipulate the minds of everyone, make the sky green, create new animals, procure empty bodies and souls, thus creating spies for you, control time. Anything you can think of is possible. Also, I would advise against destroying the entire universe, as you don't know how good your control over time is. To move into another realm, just think of a rift leading to the realm you want to go to and claw your hand vertically through the air. This will create a portal through which you can go to the desired realm. I'll transfer the knowledge of all the realms to you now. Naruto simply blinked as massive amounts of realms were projected into his head. Eventually a realm came past his vision. It was a world with heightened levels of technology, where nations were constantly waging war against one another. He smiled and decided that he wanted to go there. He thought about a portal leading there. It was a simple door, with a swirl imprinted on it. He smiled and opened the door, but before he could walk through, Yami stopped him. Naruto-kun, wait. What is it, Yami-chan? You should know that mortals are not used to seeing doors appear in the middle of the street and seeing people stepping out, right? You should form it high in the sky. Don't worry, you can fly with just a thought. She moaned slightly as Naruto grabbed her closer to him, before he levitated them both into the automatically opened door. Flying through a swirl of energy, they flew out of the door on the other hand, before it automatically closed and disappeared. Alright, Yami-chan. Anything else I need to know before I start having fun with this planet? Yeah, if you focus on giving yourself an ability, it will work as long as you can specify what it is. You can shapeshift if you want to. You can create anything you wish out of thin air. Make technology up and it will work because you want it to. Manipulate anybody you wish to. And basically anything you can think of. Since you had a horrible life in your previous realm, you might want to procure a harem for yourself. I think some love will do you good. And Naruto, you must understand. Because a god was born in your realm, it has been completely destroyed and has turned into the white void it is now. You can restore it whenever you wish though, so you might want to take some revenge on your former village. She spat out the last part, indicating that she wasn't at all pleased with the way they treated him. She sighed in discontent. She really wanted to stay with the first male who had ever shown her kindness, but she knew she had to return to hell for her duties. Naruto-kun, I have to go now. Sighing, he unhanded her, giving her a look she couldn't quite place. It wasn't lust, although it contained a hint of it. She didn't know the emotion he was giving off, so she decided to ask. Naruto-kun, could you please tell me what that emotion in your eyes is? I promise no one will ever know, and I won't think less of you whatever it is. Naruto sighed. It was truly sad for her to not even recognize that emotion. He'd have to show her later, and even though he realized that it would make her utterly dependent on him, he'd show her true love. It's love, Yami-chan, and sadness that you have to leave. How can I contact you too? She blushed fiercely, staring in disbelief at the new god. She knew he wasn't lying. She also realized that it meant that no one had ever loved her before. Sure, Cammy was her friend, but she was always a bit cool towards her. And she'd never shown her any emotion remotely like this. She realized with a dreamy smile that Naruto-kun loved her, and she knew that she loved him. However, she also realized that he was really her only chance to be loved instead of just desired. She felt even sadder knowing that she still had to leave him for her duties in hell. She hadn't checked up on them in months. Naruto-kun, I think I'll love you too. I will come see you in a week. I need to think for a while. Naruto watched her with a fluttering feeling in his heart. He had never seen the emotion in her eyes either, which means that no one had ever loved him before. He suddenly realized that Yami had never told him how to contact her, and he decided to wait for her arrival, after he made some preparations. Naruto flew over the ocean, nearing America. Yes, he's on Earth right now. However, none of the important people or brands will be included. I'm simply using names of places and the general geography so that you can all understand his actions easier. When he suddenly stopped just out of international waters, he decided to place an island here. He raised his hand and an island the size of Luxembourg appeared. Feeling pleased with himself, and wondering if he could truly go eternity without being bored with such massive capabilities, he created a palace and a minor city in front of it, as well as filling the island with everything he may need. He decided to spend the next week finding an expert on every field of science that this realm had to offer. After finding out about this thing called the internet and computers, he had researched every field of science that existed, as well as their respective experts and where they lived. Naruto teleported himself to their residences, and absorbed their knowledge because he wanted to be able to absorb knowledge. In reality, it only took him 4 days to learn about everything in this world. Afterwards, he began decorating his huge palace, which took him just enough time to walk through the palace in 2 times, which was about a day. He then created servants, soulless humans, stronger and smarter than them in every way, and completely obedient and infatuated with him. They were all in the forms of several very attractive women, the kind that any man would kill for, literally. Furthermore, he gave his slave almost unmatched cooking skills, which he had taken from this world's best chefs, and he supplied an almost limitless supply of ingredients. As he was comfortably settled, he wondered what he would do with all the time he had. Deciding to ask Ichibi no Shukaku for any ideas, he gave him a body and called his soul out. I'm finally free. I'm gonna kill you. Hahahahahahahahahaha. Naruto's sweat dropped and undid the body, muttering, damn psychopath Tanuki's yelling in my ear. Moving up to the next of the tailed beasts that were now his minions, he called a Nibi, who manifested in the form of a catgirl with blonde hair to her shoulders, and white ears along with 2 white tails, skimpy thin white clothes on her body, her shirt barely containing her large assets. Her hourglass figure was obviously visible as the only clothing she wore was a top, exposing her stomach, and a miniskirt. Nibi simply blinked, surprised that she had been called out, and then she looked at Naruto, her eyes instantly turning into hearts while a deep blush adorns her face. Before she regained her composure, a low tingling in her stomach reminding her how she felt about her master. What is it, master? She asked him, a sultry smile on her face that could melt any male. Naruto simply chuckled good-heartedly, reminding her that he already knew how she felt about him since he had all her knowledge, which made her blush. Anyway, Nibi, I have settled in this world, and now I have nothing to do. Do you have any good ideas? Nibi looked contemplative for a moment before giving a seductive smile, as she sauntered over to him, pressing her body up against his. Naruto missed Yami. He missed her enough to create an exact replica of her, although it had no soul and could not move on its own. He decided to take a nap after looking towards the replica with longing, and he drifted into a troubled sleep, filled with longing for Yami. She had absolutely nothing. She broke down and sank to the ground crying her heart out. Naruto-kun didn't need her anymore. Yami woke up slowly, stifling a scream as she felt Naruto shift. Her head was pressed into his chest. She frantically looked for a way to escape only to notice that her lower entrances weren't sore, and there were no wounds on her body, meaning that she wasn't raped last night. She felt his intoxicating body heat against her, and even though she was awake she felt no desire to leave his embrace after he hadn't betrayed her trust and done anything to her while she was asleep. She tilted her head up to look in the peaceful face of a sleeping Naruto. She just lay there for a while gazing upon him with love as she admired his perfectly built face, and she couldn't stop herself from kissing him. Naruto woke up to a sudden soft and warm feeling on his lips, Groaning from the pleasurable touch coupled with the two mounds pressed tightly against his chest, he allowed his tongue to dart forward into her mouth, startling her and making her moan at the same time as his tongue caressed the inside of her mouth, causing her to melt into the embrace. After about 3 hours of kissing, a quite lengthy session, he broke the kiss and stared at her with love in his eyes. "Good morning, Yami-chan. Have you slept well? I hope my presence has not given you nightmares?" Her eyes glazed over in happiness at his apparent concern for her well-being, before she answered him in a voice so happy that it had never been heard from her before. "Naruto-kun, that was amazing. I have never slept better. You even kept my usual nightmares away, and even though I was startled when I woke up, your warm body pressed firmly against mine felt amazing. Yes, it did feel quite nice. Regardless, I am truly happy that you've slept so well, and I'm glad that you're becoming comfortable around me. Now let me ask you a question. Yesterday I told you I loved you, and now I want to know, do you love me in return? If my love is not wished and if it is a burden, I will stop pursuing your love. I do not want to make you feel uncomfortable in any way." Once again she was shocked that he actually asked her what she wanted. Nobody has ever asked for her love, they simply demanded her body, and nobody has ever offered to back down if she didn't wish it. She could actually feel her love for the young god growing in leaps and bounds. There is no way that she would let this one chance at true happiness go, and she noticed she was even slightly looking forward to the moment when he would take her as his. Squashing that thought with a mental boulder, she blushed as she replied, her voice husky from all the love and suppressed lust. "No, Naruto-kun, I love you too, and I feel I am truly lucky that I have found someone as perfect and loving as you. You have given me a chance at love and have asked nothing in return. I think I would do anything for you." He looked at her with love, pleased at her answer but also slightly wary of her complete devotion, but decided to disregard it in favor of more pressing matters. "Thank you so much, Yami-chan. I too have never known the joy of love during my mortal life. I'm glad that I'm finally loved and by something so much better than a mere mortal. May I then ask one thing of you, Yami-chan?" "Of course, anything, Naruto-kun. Stay with me for a couple of days. I realize that I cannot or will not want you with me at all times, since it would our life monotone and bland, but I want you to visit at least once every week. Because I'll miss you otherwise." Later, 1:30 p.m. In the throne room, Naruto sat making out with Yami in his lap, who was currently withering in the pleasurable sensations from the man she loved. Suddenly though, he stopped kissing her and she dazedly looked at him to see his eyes trained on something else. She looked at it, her mind still not completely recovered from its daze. In the throne room, a squad of soldiers had entered, all carrying the emblem of the USA, all adorning their full battle gear, looking apprehended at the burning gaze sent their way. "How dare you interfere with a special moment between Yami-chan and me? Identify yourself, mortals," he ground out in an otherworldly voice that sent shivers up their spines, as his eyes glowed blood red, causing some to raise their weapons. He glared at them, causing them to freeze in their actions. One of the Marines, apparently the leader, stepped forward, attempting to dismantle the situation. "I am Captain Parker of the 3rd Recon Squad of the U.S. Army. We were ordered to investigate an island that has appeared out of nowhere, although it seems that this island was unpopulated since the town was empty. We also discovered that there are extreme amounts of natural resources available here. And what gave you the right to enter my palace or my island for that matter?" One of the more delinquent Marines stepped forward, a smirk on his face. "Shut up, idiot, we're the ones armed around here. Maybe we should have some fun with your pretty little thing over there to teach you a lesson." After this statement, the entirety of the squad gained greedy expressions on their faces except for the captain of the squad. And Yami's eyes widened in horror and she started shivering in his arms. "No, Naruto, help me, kill them please, don't let them have me." Naruto's eyes glowed brighter and an aura of death seemed to appear around him, giving the Marines trouble drawing breath as they experienced their own death at his hands in thousands of different ways. "You dare threaten my love with rape? This will be considered an act of war. You insolent mortals have doomed your country and signed your own death warrants." He lifted his hands and pointed towards the squad. And in the time span of a second, all but the captain were wiped away in a giant blast that completely vaporized their remains, before the wall of the palace repaired itself, seeming to gather matter from out of nowhere. He turned his burning gaze to the captain of the late 3rd Recon Squad and hissed out, "Leave now, mortal, before I change my mind about letting you live, and tell your leaders that the end of your country will come, simply because your squad couldn't keep their hormones in check. The captain looked on in horror as his squad was decimated due to their attitude towards this man's woman, and he ran away as fast as he could, stepping into the army boat they came with, setting off quickly to warn his leaders. Naruto was not stupid. From the distance to their mainland it would take 3 days at least to get there by boat. Meaning that America would be warned mere minutes before his attack hit. Plans forming into his mind dissipated however, as his thoughts returned to his love, still shivering in fear of the man he just destroyed. Fear to be raped again. He wrapped his arms tightly around her, allowing her to cry into his chest as he muttered soothing words to her. He had planned to wait a little before asserting his dominance, but with this kind of insults from the petty mortals he could not wait any longer. They will fall. Later that day 4 p.m. 3 ninjas phased into the room, backpacks bursting with detailed reports on every one of the enemy's military assets. After most of the reporting was done they got to the part about nuclear weapons. And as Naruto drew up the knowledge on the inner workings of such weapons, he realized that they might be a problem. So using his powers over the laws of physics he temporarily disabled nuclear energy on Earth. He didn't want to turn off all stars permanently. For his forces he decided on using crystals imbued with a small sliver of his power, which was everlasting, and made them in a way that should a mortal come into contact with the crystal, or if it was removed from its place in the war machines, the crystal would immediately disintegrate, taking the war machine along with it, giving them no chance to salvage his technology. He also imbued the war weapons with highly advanced sentient spirits, bent on serving him and him only, so his weapons couldn't be hijacked either. For the infantry, he created souls with ninja training, imbued with the powers of the three-pronged Sharingan to enable them to aim perfectly. He gave them highly advanced armor, powered by the crystals embedded in their bodies, which would dissipate again when they died. He created guns that could shoot a solid ray of destructive energy, which could be operated only with chakra, which these humans did not possess. He gave them immense chakra stores so they could be able to operate the guns. For the war machines there for now. Mantis. Small, slightly larger than the average human, shaped like a praying mantis with energy blades that could form at any time and cut through anything. Its fingers are armed with the same energy beams from the guns that can pierce through anything. Its armor was pure white. While its eyes glow a dark green, it is extremely agile, and able to consistently run at 50 miles per hour for at least 48 hours before it would need a 15-minute pause. Primera. Larger, tank-sized, shaped like a hovercraft, hovers 1 foot of the ground, not suited for combat in rubble due to its low acceleration. It cannot dodge blows well, even though its top speed is 200 miles per hour, due to a special mass accelerator unit placed on all emission surfaces. For close combat it features 2 turrets that fire twin laser beams, that can cut clean through a tank in 1 hit. Its main purpose however, are its large cannon that can rotate at nearly any angle, and fires a beam of aurora energy, which disintegrates anything without water in it, and instantly brings any water to a boil, causing such things to violently combust if they are further than 5 meters away from the Primera, at which point the beam reaches the right frequency, i.e. human bodies, air, lakes, water pipes, etc. And its second main function is a small communications probe that can telepathically transmit tactical information to all allied forces in the area. The probe can travel at 100 miles per hour while not attached to the Primera, and contrary to its main unit it has great agility and can dodge almost any blow. The probe is basically a ball filled with eyes on every side, as well as heat detection, night vision and overall detection of human life. It also features a small turret that fires marking bugs, which act like a tiny needle that will bury itself into the target's body, after which he can be tracked for up to 72 hours before it wears off, and the needle dissipates into a deadly poison. Talon. Very large, egg-shaped battle cruisers, able to hold any altitude desired. It can move underwater if desired and can reach a top speed of Mach 9. During battle though it slows down to speeds ranging from 0 to 100 miles per hour, for bombardment and chases respectively. Armed with multiple weapons such as the ion cannons, firing a ray of positively charged ions at the target. Afterwards it releases a giant burst of negative energy, which will discharge in a powerful lightning strike with a current of 500 million volts, instantly killing or frying any human or mechanical target hit. Or the rocket pods. Roughly 500,000 missile pods will open on the Talon, raining an infinite supply of small antimatter missiles down, each strong enough to vaporize a house. For protection, it deploys an energy shield that is maintained by 5 different sentient spirits. The shield can cover the entire Talon, or the spirits can activate only a small part which is in danger. The rocket pods cannot fire if the shields completely cover the Talon. Talons are able to carry other forces and can send off pods located at the sides of the cruiser to offload the troops without having to land. Able to carry and release the Locust unit. The Talon is about as large as a cruise ship, but slightly higher. Their hull can be modified to take on any color, but is mostly kept pure white. Some parts on the hull may be fluorescent. The Talon is the main unit of Naruto's army and as such has a palace under the top part of the hull, which can be switched out with a hull made of a material that can be looked through as if it were glass, yet is harder to scratch than it is to break diamonds. The top part of the hull can also be dematerialized and stored in the rim that separates the two parts of the hull. The ship is in this condition still protected as the reflector shields will still activate. Can be used as a boat, submarine, subterranean vehicle, ground vehicle, low-hovering, airship and spaceship. Can withstand any temperature or pressure. Locust. Small car-sized, UFO-shaped jets. Armed with only a single weapon, one of the only in the army with widespread destruction capabilities. Inside of the Locust is a crystal over 20 times too big for its relative size. It is therefore imbued with much more power. This is utilized in the incredible agility and speed of the Locust, as well as mainly in the destructive capabilities. The Locusts can turn or stop completely in mere seconds, and can travel at twice the speed of a typical fighter jet. When it attacks, it forces a large amount of energy from the crystal through a filter, which turns it into pure destructive energy, or Yuki, which is then forced out of its barrel at the speed of light, causing an explosion ranging from moderately sized to huge, depending on the amount of energy used. Locusts are mainly used in swarms, ranging from 50 to 400. Are usually carried in talons due to their higher speed. Medic. Small, extremely agile and fast, made from a non-reflecting material that makes them completely black, except for the blue glow in its eyes. Shaped like a normal human with a jump pack, the medic is imbued with the godly powers of creation, allowing them to repair all the war machines without having to be in contact with them, as well as create new smaller ones, such as locusts, mantis and primera. Its only means of defense are a very powerful shield, and 3 4-inch long energy claws, which can make them deadly in close combat. Atlas. The Atlas is a 4 stories tall robotic being with 6 arms. It is equipped with several weapon arrays, ranging from hundreds of turrets that fire destructive beams of light, to 3,000 rocket pods that fire an infinite supply of antimatter missiles. The Atlas are behemoths of intense strength not made for travel. It can be broken up in nanoparticles and stored within the Talon battleship. Each Talon can only carry 3 of these at a time, due to their massive size. Prometheus. The ultimate weapon of the army, Prometheus is a pure white satellite in orbit around planet Earth. Invisible by cloaking shield, none of the people have even noticed it yet. It will fire an enormous blast of energy that will cause temperatures in the target zone to rise to 7,000 degrees. It also has a secondary function that attracts asteroids from space and fires them at the target area. It is operated via mental command by Naruto, and it can fire 5 times at maximum radius before needing a reload from Naruto. After having created 50 Talon battleship loaded to the brim with forces, each Talon contained 500 mantis, 300 primera, 250 locusts, 100 medics, 3 atlas as well as 1,000 of his infantry. He mentally commanded them to hide under the waters around the island. His work finally done, it took him a day to work it all out. He went to the throne room and created a giant 150 TV with huge speakers, even though he just wanted to watch the news. Flipping the channels at his huge TV with every channel in existence, finally finding the news, he simply listened. Earlier this week, a small country-sized island has simply appeared out of nowhere. Recon teams are being sent from all over the world, and while no message has been received from the team sent by the USA, satellite images have shown that a large palace along with a minor city and bountiful amounts of gold and oil are present. Earlier yesterday, our satellites detected a powerful spike of a yet unknown energy, which held no determinable frequency. This energy spike was accompanied by a giant red beam of light coming out of the palace, and continuing on for a yet undetermined distance. even though it's definitely more than 30,000 miles. This energy spike is regarded as a potentially hostile action, and recon teams are therefore armed with heavy gear to deal with any potential threats. Scientists are researching the strange energy spike in patterns to see if this could be used to solve the world's current energy problems. More on this as the story unfolds. In other news, it seems that nuclear plants all around the whole planet have simply stopped functioning earlier this week. No cause has been pointed out as of yet, and the problem has gone unsolved. Scientists are at a loss, and they state that for all intents and purposes nothing is broken in the plants, and even if they replicate the process, the atoms just don't split. Even as we speak, research continues, and we will keep you updated as developments arise. This is Martha Baker for Channel 3 News. If she exists, it's a coincidence. The time had come. If his forces leave now, then America will have 5 hours to prepare for the attack. Naruto placed an invisible but unbreakable barrier around his island and created a vehicle for himself. He ordered his talons to attack cities around the country in pairs of 3 to 6 depending on the size of the city, guaranteeing a fast conquest of the USA. As they took off, he teleported to New York. I dunno, do I have to disclaim that I don't own New York? Walking among the people, who were staring strangely at him, men with distrust, and women with lust. He flew up from the ground, causing men to yell in fear, and some women to scream, while others just continued looking dreamily at him, blushes on their faces. He settled on the top of a 30-story building, watching in amusement as people were staring at him in shock from another building. He then disabled every way of long-distance communication, or rather he disabled all the machines. He would still be able to hear. Except for New York, he wanted the police to squirm a little. He was sitting in a precarious position, laying there on a balcony without proper fencing, his legs dangling from the edge, watching the sky as his forces inevitably drew nearer. Suddenly an amplified voice boomed from the ground. "Hey, you get down from there. It's dangerous." He simply looked up, a bored expression set on his face, although they couldn't make it out, before he replied in a bored tone. "Shut up, old man. Leave me alone." His voice was amplified by his godly powers, leaving the officers on the ground wondering how they could hear him speak, before they realized what he said and instantly became angry. They didn't know, however, that he was just playing with them. He had already placed an impenetrable barrier around the city of New York, making it impossible to leave, but entering was still possible. Leading everyone who was already in a panic because of the communications shutout, create a panic once they entered New York to check on their families. The officers sent an arrest team into the building, tasked with the apprehension of this man. It was illegal to commit suicide, and that is what it looked like he was about to do. 5 minutes later, a door burst open on the roof with a dull clank, revealing 6 officers with guns poised. They looked around warily before spotting the boy, now sitting up, swinging his legs in a playful manner, as if he was going to fall at any moment now. Startled, they slowly moved closer, while yelling at the kid not to do it. He glanced at them in confusion, before calling out to them. "Don't do what?" "I'm not doing anything." In disbelief they watched the boy. He didn't seem at all depressed. But then why was he sitting in a place where a single wrong move could end his life prematurely? "Listen, kid. You need to get away from the edge. Don't you know how high up we are? If you fall, you'll surely die." Naruto feigned innocence, and leaned forward over the edge, as if to look down. A hidden smirk adorned his face, as he acted like he slipped, falling off the edge to the horror of the 6 men gathered on the roof, as well as the small platoon on the ground as they saw the kid fall towards the ground at a frightening pace, eliciting screams from all who saw as he hit the ground. However, instead of becoming a bloody smear on the pavement, a small crater appeared in the ground, dust blocking the view of what was going on. Shocked, the officers stood frozen as a soft, but evil laughter emanated through the deadly quiet streets, and as the dust settled they saw the young man from earlier dusting off his pants, a merry smile on his face. His sudden voice broke the tension, allowing the cops to move for themselves once more. "Ah, that was fun. You should have seen the look on your faces when I fell. Priceless." The apparent leader was the first to regain his nerve, and spoke to the boy in an odd, but scared voice. "How are you alive? You just fell from a skyscraper." The boy merely raised an eyebrow before shooting the man a disarming smile. Before answering, "Oh, that, I can't die, it's impossible. You can rip my heart out, crush my brains, or shoot me in the face, it doesn't do anything. You really think I would let myself fall if it would kill me?" A police commissioner that had just arrived and saw the entire thing grinned under his mask. If he would give this boy to the science department of the FBI, he would get a hefty promotion for sure. He walked up to Naruto and twisted his arm behind his back while proclaiming in an authoritative voice, "Get in the car, hotshot, you're coming with us." Naruto's amused face suddenly turned into one of outrage. How dare these lowly humans touch him? He vaporized the man, while grinding out in a voice filled with hatred, his voice easily discernible even over the cries of surprise, anger and fear at the loss of their commissioner. "How dare you touch me, human? Trying to use me as an experiment for dissection? I shall ask Yami to torture your soul once you arrive in hell." Suddenly he gained an eerie smile on his face, before he continued his speech, although at a much lower volume. "And I will make sure that the rest of this city will join you in death." With that sentence finished, he disappeared from sight, eliciting cries of surprise from all the cops around him. He grew 4 feet long energy claws on each hand, and without once reappearing in the sight of the humans he sliced them all up, leaving just one man to breathe rasping breaths as one of the claws had pierced his lung, and he was now slowly suffocating on his own blood. He was the only one to see Naruto reappear, a scary smirk adorning his face as the energy claws disappeared. The officer tried to glare at him, but in his present state he didn't look quite as threatening as he may have wished. What are you?" Naruto's smirk widened, and he spoke intoning his sentence with so much divine power that half the continent must have heard it. "I am a god." The man recoiled in obvious fear of the voice that held so much power it made him want to run and hide. Alas, he couldn't do it because he was laying on the floor in a puddle of his own blood. Naruto smirked, his eyes flashed, and suddenly a giant guillotine blade appears in the air, and smacked down with incredible speed, bisecting the man from crotch to head, his tortured scream being ended almost as soon as it begun, leaving gore all around the man. Naruto's face turned neutral before a malicious chuckle escaped his lips. He figured it was time to begin the destruction of New York. He decided to begin with the Statue of Liberty. It was fitting to first destroy all that represented their liberty before he crushes them into the waiting arms of Shinigami. Flying over to the statue at a moderate pace, with black angel wings he made to give them some kind of warning, as well as to gather them so they could see their own hope shatter. After 3 hours the entire shore was black with people, as well as several boats and helicopters, reporting the event live in the entire country because he had allowed signals from New York to reach everyone. He was in a full close-up, everyone could see his wings flap slowly to keep him in place. Slowly he turned one eye to the camera and grinned a mischievous grin, making innumerable females of all ages blush and stare dreamily. The reporters were confused as their cameras suddenly zoomed out on their own accord, while the young man held up his hand as if he was going to chop someone in the neck, and his other hand to his side, open wide as a ball of white energy appeared in his hand. Everyone was looking at him in intense wonder and amazement. Suddenly, as if he decided to do something else, the hand he held in the air suddenly clenched around seemingly nothing, until a white fedora with a black lint around it appeared in his hand and he put it on. Around his body a pure white cloak appeared, while his upper torso was covered in a tight black muscle shirt. Around his neck was a pure black necklace with a symbol of 2 white wings wrapped around the sun. His wings turned white and turned into 6 wings pointing out at different angles. A halo appeared over his head, and increased in glow until a godly light surrounded him. His pants were dark blue, with a black belt with a silver belt buckle with the kanji for God, giving off a soft white light. He lowered his hand, before addressing them all. America in its entirety was listening intensely as the heavenly blonde spoke. "People of America, you have committed sins against me for too long now, and it's enough. I was content to leave you alone for long enough now. Time and time again I have watched as you went against everything I stand for, killing each other in increasing quantities, fighting amongst each other all the while destroying this beautiful planet that has been gifted to you. Stealing from each other, destroying lives just for a mere $10. Polluting this planet all because you are too lazy to invent technology that gives you what you want without destroying the environment. Releasing atomic bombs on this planet, uncaring if the plant life or the animals suffer. Viewing yourself as superior creatures just because you have rational thoughts. And worst of all, people of America is the rape. Thousands of women's lives are destroyed each day just because you fools have not the decency to keep your desire in check. Stealing food to live is something I can understand, but taking something that destroys another's life while you do not really need it is unacceptable. Now I know I have let this go on for thousands of years even while I was bored, and I know better than you do how enjoyable the of a woman's flesh is, and I know I enjoy it daily, with many different women. But I would never take a woman against her will, no matter how weak and puny she may be compared to me. All the women I've had love me and only me, and if they would object then I would willingly let them leave. Yesterday a recon team of the US Army, representatives of your country, entered my domain and my palace. They entered my quarters where I was making out with Yami, a poor soul who has been raped her entire mortal life until she became a goddess. And they foolishly threatened to rape my woman. At that moment I knew what I had to do. You have gone too far this time. I am a god. And this. He raised his hand and slashed it diagonally downwards towards the Statue of Liberty. Immediately the statue was bisected at the waist and the island behind it was as well. He quickly followed up with another hand, flat palm pointed towards the falling statue, and a large beam of white light blasted through it, vaporizing it in its entirety. Is your punishment. Your precious liberty shall be taken away until you can irrefutably prove to me that your kind deserves its freedom and can change its ways. I will add a new law of nature that makes any rapists die immediately. Now you foolish mortals, submit, or die. Cries of fear and outrage could be heard clearly from the shore. The women of the population were torn. Their hearts were willing to follow this young god, but they just couldn't. Hesitantly they joined in on the cries of outrage, but their inner war was not missed by the young god, and he responded in kind. Then you will not submit? Pity. For all those who in their heart wish to submit, for you death shall only be temporary, for the others, enjoy hell bitches. With that said, Naruto created a new warrior class, inspired by his original realm, the ninja. Ninja. Human-sized shadow warriors, a dull non-reflective black color except the joints, fingers, feet, eyes and a single vertical line along the torso. Aforementioned spots glow a dark red color. Clad in bulletproof armor that will simply deflect the bullets without denting. Fastest and most agile of all the ground forces, able to reach speeds up to 300 miles per hour within a second with relative ease. Slowing down and evading is no different matter. Ninja are equipped with infinite amounts of holy shuriken and kunai, which can penetrate an entire human body with ease. The ninja is also equipped with a large dark red energy blade, over 4 feet in length on each arm, sprouting out from their bracers, have the ability to channel chakra for supplemental skills, such as water walking and tree walking. He created over 200 of these who simply stood completely still in front of him. He smirked at them and said, "Kill them all." Every ninja shot out 2 energy blades from their blades and in a chorus of, "Hi!" they all vanished. While the ninja were taking care of all the people, Naruto decided to join in and do some property damage. Since the ninja weren't really equipped to be able to destroy buildings, he swept down into the city, adorning a form more suited for combat. He created a jetpack on his back since using his powers to fly would distract him slightly from his fun time. His cloak and shirt disappeared, and his hands were covered with eerie black gloves that radiated darkness. This left him in only his pants, his black gloves and his white hat, with his jetpack on his back. He flew up to the top of the highest building he could find and quickly flew down along the side of the building. He created an energy beam out of his arm that was 300 meters long, and angling arms diagonally downwards. He began to cut the skyscraper into even slices that, due to the angle of the cut, soon rocketed downwards, causing craters to form and buildings to collapse. He then resumed his flight in a horizontal position, angled slightly upwards as he was heading for another skyscraper. In the middle of the building, he stuck out his hand forward, and shot out a large white beam of energy that left a gaping hole in the tower before he flew through the hole as it was starting to collapse around him. Reforming his energy blade, only this time on both his hands as he stuck out both his arms to the sides, he began to fly in between various buildings while doing corkscrews, mangling the buildings into a mess of large, weird-shaped slices as they sent pieces of the building flying in different directions. He used his powers to lift up all large loose objects in the city, before sending them crashing down, making all the people still alive gape in disbelief as it rained cars and buses, and the occasional tank. Buildings groaned in protest as large metal objects slammed into them, breaking their share of glass windows. None of the buildings fell though, but they were certainly damaged. Suddenly Naruto saw a large group of police screaming in hysteria as they pointed their weapons at him. He decided to freak them out before they died, and he summoned his cloak and shirt as he landed, but not before creating a large fiery explosion in front of them, setting the ground aflame, and hiding him in the smoke. Some of the officers shouted in surprise as they saw a shadow of him walking through the flames calmly, his cloak fluttering in non-existent winds. He walked with extra theatrics, slow and with extra sway, intimidating the police even more. As the shadow became clearer, they started shaking in fear, their aim no longer being steady. Naruto focused his gaze on one officer in the very back. He stopped time completely, watching as everything but him became deathly still. Naruto formed an energy blade in one of his hands, cleanly decapitating the 10 officers closest to him, watching as they remained still, a clean line in the middle of their necks being the only signs that they were in fact dead. Naruto added in a small explosive in the brains of everyone except for the one officer in the back. Detonating them, he noticed that it seemed like nothing happened, making sure to remain completely still during the exchange, not giving the one remaining officer any clue that he did anything. He let time resume its normal flow, watching as blood spurted in fountains out of the heads of the first 10, while their bodies fell limp to the ground. And he just kept walking as the heads of the rest exploded in a dance of red gore. Dull thumps were heard as they hit the ground. The last officer let out a scream as Naruto calmly continued a slow gait towards him, frozen as his body wouldn't listen to his brain's command to run. He held up a pistol and shot it multiple times, riddling Naruto with bullets of hot lead. However, he didn't even flinch as the bullets hit him, and after choosing the weirdest method of regeneration, the bullets were simply pushed out of his body, making the officer soil his pants in fear. Thinking his fun with this city was done, Naruto simply killed the officer before destroying all his ninja troop, with more than half of the city left intact. He left the city and stood a little ways out of the city before he gave a mental command to Prometheus. In Earth's orbit, a large white satellite shaped like a cylinder narrowing in increments before at the tip a large blue glowing crystal could be seen. Suddenly the crystal turned orange and the satellite held still in orbit until it was positioned right above the city of New York, at which point a pulse of power distorted reality around the satellite before a large orange burst of energy fired from the crystal, its beam widening steadily as it neared the city with its blast of heat that would destroy the city. Back on Earth, the sky right above the city suddenly turned orange and warped at the intense heat that would rival the core of the sun. As it hit the city, the entire area was engulfed in a glow of orange as the temperature rapidly started to rise. Entire structures twisted and warped as the intense heat made them unable to carry their own weight. The tortured screams of humans could be heard as they burned alive. The water around the city boiled as large quantities turned into steam. The entire city became a puddle of molten metal and concrete, before solidifying after the blast from Prometheus relented. Now where once a great city stood, was nothing more than a giant round slab of concrete, metal and glass, carrying human ashes within it. Elsewhere, in another city to the west, massive shadows fell over another city, as 3 talons blocked out the sun. The people were horribly afraid of what this meant. Was it an alien attack? Or was it the Russians? Yes, they actually suspected that Russia had this kind of technology. Suddenly thousands of hatches slid open with a menacing clack. The next thing they knew, thousands upon thousands of small rockets flew out of the massive ships, leaving the same number of beautiful yet menacing dark blue trails behind. As they finally hit the city sporadically, massive amounts of large black blasts rocked the city, engulfing 80% of the city in black, before a moment later the blast had cleared, revealing nothing. Everything that had been inside of those blasts had just disappeared. People screamed in fear of the to them unknown threat. The police station was mostly still intact, and immediately sent out a call for help, but no one answered their calls. In a desperate move, they all armed themselves with SWAT gear in order to try and damage the unknown invaders. Their puny bullets were however vaporized by the shields of the Talons, and before they could realize this, aforementioned ship stopped completely, before a beam came straight down from all 3 of them, and before their eyes a 4 stories tall robot materialized, and before they could overcome their shock a multitude of pods fired out from the Talons, crashing into the ground at high velocities. Shortly after, the doors slid open and an eerie blue glow came from inside, until a mere moment later a large amount of strange creatures came rushing out, hunting down people and destroying buildings. The mantis all spread out relatively quickly, running down the people and decapitating them with practiced ease. slicing up a couple of cars in the process. 50 of the Primera dispersed through the city, sending out their drones once they got to a strategic point. Upon being released, the drones would use their life detection function to scout out the locations of humans in the city, upon which this information would be sent to the other forces. Suddenly, hatches located along the outer rim of the Talons slid open without a sound. Shortly after, hundreds of locusts sped out, heading off to the predetermined locations filled with human life, at which point they would unleash their weapons on the cowering humans, effectively wiping out every human the Mantis missed. The Atlas was busy unleashing its entire arsenal on the city. Missiles flew out without pause, annihilating many buildings, while the fists destroyed every building that was too close for the missiles to be used. The many turrets fired huge amounts of beams, cutting through the foundation of another building, while the rest of the turrets shot down fleeing humans with utmost accuracy. In a denser part of the city, most of the work was done by the soldiers. Their ability to accurately predict where an enemy is going to be in a second was of utmost importance during ambushes. They were walking into higher buildings, blocking all the exits while a group of soldiers searches the entire building for human life, as well as some of the soldiers, 5 squads of 15, were lying ready on top of buildings and in windows, ready to snipe any person in their sights. The locusts that weren't hunting humans down were circling around the perimeter of the city, destroying all who saw them, leaving the other cities blissfully unaware of their inevitable end. The destruction of the buildings were mostly left to the giant Atlas units. After about an hour of battle, the pods suddenly stopped giving off a reading, meaning that all human life within the city limits had ceased to exist. Immediately, all the forces stopped moving in unison, and the large Atlas units moved back towards their landing spot, which was directly beneath the center of their respective Talon battleships. A beam immediately shot out, dematerializing them and storing them in their respective containers as loose particles. All the other forces streamed back into their pods, and with a mighty rumble the pods drew themselves from the ground, flying back into their battleships where all the hatches closed. The Locusts suddenly halted their patrol routines, and flew back to the Talons, timing it perfectly so that all the bays were full at the exact same time. The hatches closed and all the rocket pods opened, preparing to release one final volley of missiles. All the pods clicked open and tens of thousands of missiles flew towards every last speck of dust left in the city. And when it was over, there was nothing left but an empty spot with roads leading towards it. The Talons just clicked their pods shut, brought their shields of, and sped off towards their next destination. With all these powers at his command, the conquest of America was a brief but decisive one. In less than 3 weeks the entire continent had been wiped clean of human life. And Naruto has reseeded the continent with the once clean rivers, the abundant forests, and the bountiful lakes. After the conquest of America had been realized, Naruto had finally allowed global communications to resume, only so he could watch their reactions, resulting in an interesting newscast. Flashback. Terrible news to all listeners. It appears, to our great sadness, that the United States of America is no more. Satellites confirm that every city or village on the entire continent has been decimated by a force from the island that just appeared out of nowhere. After the island appeared, nothing noteworthy happened on it for quite some time. That remained until the recon party from the USA arrived at this island. Several hours after they arrived, a red energy beam flew out of the palace that they had just entered. Presumably they disturbed someone or something in there, because it was confirmed that not 2 days later, an enormous fleet of no less than 50 airships rose from the water and sped at unimaginable speeds towards the continent of North America. Along the way they split up and moved from town to town, not sustaining a single casualty along the way that we can confirm. It is strongly believed that this is all connected to the single broadcast we received, wherein a man with 3 pairs of angel wings, a white coat, and a white fedora destroyed the Statue of Liberty and claimed to be a god, in which he claims that the last straw was that one of the recon Marines threatened to rape his woman, which would correspond with the reports stating that the beam was fired after the Marines entered the palace. Has one single man ruined everything for humanity, just because he couldn't keep his mouth shut? Only time will tell. It seems that by coincidence or possible intervention, no longer are atomic bombs working, and anything less doesn't even seem to faze his forces. Intelligence reports suggest that if this man plans to attack us, we won't stand a chance. The only positive thing I can tell you is this. If he truly plans to re-educate humanity as a better species, he probably won't kill us all. This is Martha Baker for Channel 3 News. A rift opened in time and space, and two figures floated out, one holding the other in a loving embrace. As their eyes began to adjust to the bright light, they noticed that they were on a small island with a tree in the middle. On it was the number 41 written in white letters. It was connected by bridges to many others just like it, all with different numbers written on it. Currently they appeared to be at the dock. Naruto held Yami tighter as she settled comfortably in his arms. He flew away from the archipelago at massive speeds, and as soon as it was just barely visible at the horizon he stopped and floated still for a bit. Quickly he summoned a Talon battleship, opening the upper hull, revealing a copy of his palace, along with many things such as an onsen, mixed gender, a 5-star restaurant and hotel. The servants' quarters, just a way smaller version of his palace, a huge vault filled with treasure of the highest grade, and all you could ever need. He then summoned all of his servants from Earth, restocked his kitchen with all the foods he would need, and refurnished his palace, which he was able to do rather quickly since he had already made the decision of what to place where. He also created a new addition, a hot tub in his private quarters, one he would put to use with Yami soon enough. Landing on his new ship, he told it to slowly move closer to the island so that he would have another 6 hours before they arrived, and he entered his private quarters with Yami. "So Yami-chan, I'm going to go in the hot tub for a while, you want to join me?" He smiled mischievously at her, causing her to blush, although inside she was smiling that Naru-kun wanted to have another moment. Alright Naru-kun. After changing into their swimwear they were soon relaxing in the hot water. After a while Naruto started to get bored, so he scooted over to her side, which she didn't notice because she had her eyes closed, and he suddenly hugged her tightly, placing a lustful kiss on her lips. Feeling slightly surprised as she simply moaned slightly and wrapped her own arms around him as he explored her mouth with his tongue, she hesitantly swished her tongue against his, and it continued in a passionate battle of love. He lowered one of his hands and started to softly massage her backside, earning him a lusty moan from her. She traced one of her hands over his chest and abs. After a while the kiss ended, and she laid her head on his chest with a content sight at having gotten more attention from her Naru-kun. Naruto simply chuckled and pulled her in his lap, having her lay back with her head in the crook of his neck. While he whispered lovingly in her ear, "You are truly amazing Yami-chan, being able to be so comfortable around me after what you've been through show that you have a strong spirit." She blushed, and laid soft kiss on his mouth in thanks, before squealing as he tickled her slightly, before once again relishing in the soft embrace that he held her in. Later, after their arrival on the island, Yami left Naruto again, giving him some time to himself. Naruto jumped off his ship, ordering it to close its glass top and sink beneath the surface, before walking through the city until he entered a small bar called Shaki's Ripoff Bar. Raising one eyebrow at the name of the place, he unsummoned his cloak and shirt, thinking it was better to make a badass entrance than to have to kill everyone that so much as looks at him wrong before stepping in, coming upon a scene that had a talking reindeer with a hat eating cotton candy. Suddenly he heard a small rustle and turned to see a girl with green hair and brown eyes looking at him with a blush on her face. Somehow he felt something strange about her. He walked right up to her, to the confusion of the straw hats, and he spoke for the first time since entering. "There's something different about you." All the straw hat, Kami and Hakan tensed, but then he poked her right in the forehead, instantly gaining all the information he was looking for getting. "Ah, so you're a mermaid, aren't you?" She could only nod, her eyes wide open in fear. She didn't think that Luffy would be able to save her from this man. This belief was instantly proven to be valid, when Luffy executed a preemptive strike on the young man, upon which the young man just backhanded him with such devastating power that even Luffy lost consciousness for a brief moment before groggily standing up. Ma, you can relax, I'm not going to take her from you." "Is she your slave?" Their faces darkened before Luffy shouted, "Of course she's not our slave. She's our friend." Naruto's face brightened, before a charming smile appeared on his face as he ruffled Kami's hair, gaining him a blush as she pushed her head into his hand. "Good, then I won't have to kill you all. Can't have you abusing this sweet girl now, can I?" Their faces turned confused, while Kami just blushed and looked happy. Hakan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He sat down at their table and ordered a whiskey. Before noticing that both Shaki and Kami were staring at him with a blush, He snapped his fingers, summoning his shirt and cloak, making everyone's eyes widen to the size of dinner plates, while Luffy went on a rant of how awesome that was, joined by Chopper, who were both asking him excitedly how he did that, being the only ones who completely forgot that he threatened them all with death if Kami was their slave, something she herself had not forgotten. Naruto decided he liked them. They were weird, yes, but nice. Naruto decided to change the subject. So you guys pirates? Yeah, we are. Why are you a marine? TCH, I hold no alliance, I do whatever I wish, so what are you doing here? We're looking for an old man so that he can code our ship. And, why do you need that? So that we can sail underwater to Fishman Island. Naruto thought for a moment, before seeming to decide on something. Let us go find the rest of your crew, you do not need a coding, I will have you ride on my ship, it can travel underwater, I'll even take your ship with me. Luffy and his crew were severely shocked. Moments before this blonde was threatening them, and shortly after he was offering them a ride so they wouldn't need to have their ship coded. The moment of shock lasted several seconds, before Luffy and Chopper's eyes turned into stars. And they began on a rant of how nice he was, causing everyone to sweat drop. Hakken, however, wasn't as easily convinced. Now wait 1 minute, pretty boy. You just threatened to kill us all if Kami was our slave. Why are you suddenly offering them a ride? Naruto glanced at Hakken with a slightly darker expression on his face. 3 things. First, don't disrespect me. I will not stand for insults from any being lower than myself, and that include humans and you. Second, I just have great dislike for rapists and slavers. You aren't any of the two, so I have no reason to dislike you. Third, I am oh so bored, and I have a feeling that this will entertain me. Now come, Mr. Pirate. Lead me to your crew. Naruto unsummoned his shirt and cloak, deciding that he didn't really need them at the moment, and they set out to find Nami, Robin, Zoro, and the ship where the rest was present. It took them about 3 hours to find the first 3, and they were walking through the streets as 3 weird guys with helmets on their faces were walking towards them, while everyone around them was bowing their heads down. Hakken pushed the heads of the Straw Hats down before yelling at Naruto to bow down. Naruto, however, ignored him and remained standing tall, giving the guys with the helmets a look that screamed, "Don't fuck with me, I can kill you in the time it takes you to blink." The Tenryubito ignored that, however, and screamed at Naruto while aiming his gun at him, firing again and again, repeatedly hitting the blonde boy in the head, although he was holding his gaze while ignoring the insignificant wounds inflicted on him. He could finally make out the screams of the helmeted men. "Bow down, you lowly scum. I'm a Tenryubito, I founded the world." Naruto suddenly sprouted 3 pairs of wings, and a halo shone upon his head, his belt buckle with the kanji for God shining a bright white. As he spoke, his voice sounding so powerful and ethereal that everyone stood motionless. "Bow down? To you, lowly mortal? How dare you command me to bow down to you? Die, you insignificant mortal." He raised one hand and a beam of light shot out of it, causing the Tenryubito's head to be vaporized in the blast. While he closed his other hand, the earth around their guards shooting up and crushing them. The skies then grew dark, like it was the middle of the night, but even darker. Naruto raised both his hands, and out of a rip in time-space, an ethereal figure, holding a dagger in his mouth, appeared. It stopped, looking at Naruto with what everyone assumed was a questioning glance. "Shinigami-kun, would you be so kind as to reap the souls of these fools?" They thought they could make me bow down to them. Shinigami looked at the mortals with a disbelieving glance, before taking his knife out of his mouth, and reforming it as a giant scythe, chuckling as he stared the mortals down. "I'll be glad to. Mortals need to know their place before us, right? By the way, congratulations on your ascension." He swept his scythe down, watching as the Tenryubito began screaming as their souls were pulled out, before he opened another rift and disappeared, leaving them crumpled on the ground, their eyes open in shock, but lacking any life. At his command, the skies turned blue again, as if nothing ever happened. He turned around to face the Straw Hat once more, seeing Zoro and Brook staring at him in slight fear, Nami, Robin and Kami slightly drooling with massive blushes on their cheeks, and Luffy and Chopper with stars in their eyes as they yelled how awesome that was. He walked up to Nami and Robin and hooked one arm around Nami's and one around Robin's waists, pulling them close. They sighed in happiness and leaned into him, forgetting completely that they actually just met him, just happy that he was holding them close. With his arms still around them, they started walking to the docks, completely ignoring the frantic cries of a marine that 3 of the Tenryubito had just been killed, calling for an admiral to take care of things. As they neared the docks, they noticed that a small fleet of battleships was approaching the archipelago. The other crewmates were a bit distrusting at first, especially after noticing the way Nami and Robin were acting around him. Like they were madly in love with him, not caring that he was holding them both at the same time. But they relented after hearing that Naruto killed 3 of the Tenryubito, obviously dismissing the thought that he was actually a marine. After Luffy asked him where his ship was, a giant egg-shaped white ship came out of the water right next to them. To the amazement of Frankie, the top of the hull simply disappeared, and a hatch in the hull opened, allowing their ship to enter. After they all got off their ship, the hatch closed and they were allowed to go on board. After they were all done with gawking at the wonders of the ship, they were having a conversation in the lounge. Naruto was sitting on the lounge chair with Nami and Robin against him. He was caressing their bellies, causing them to occasionally stifle a low moan. They were enjoying themselves, which was apparent by their blushes and the fact that they were resting their heads on Naruto's shoulders. When suddenly Naruto asked a question. "Excuse me for prying, but I sense something different about Luffy, Chopper, Brook and Miss Robin here. Care to tell me what it is?" He finished, squeezing Robin's side affectionately, before continuing with one last revelation. "Frankie, something is off about you too, but it feels different than with the first 4. After a moment of thought, they decided to tell Naruto what was hardly a secret anyway. Robin sprouted arms from all over Naruto, seductively caressing his chest and abdomen. Chopper grew into a large gorilla-like creature. Luffy stretched his face out. Brook muttered about how he had died before, and Frankie opened up his stomach to reveal his cola reservoirs. Seeing Naruto look confused, Robin decided to explain it to him, but not before letting out a seductive giggle. "You see, Naruto-kun, Copper, Brook, Luffy and myself have devil fruits, and Frankie is a cyborg." Naruto's eyes widened ever so slightly, before a smile appeared on his face. He had indeed chosen an interesting bunch of humans. "Really, tell me about these devil fruits." "Well, a devil fruit is a special fruit that grants the person who eats it special powers. They can change the substance your body is made from, give you the ability to transform into something, or give you control over an element. However, in gaining these abilities you also lose the ability to swim. In fact, you become unable to move in the water." Naruto frowned. That was a problem. If they found his crystal by chance, the ship would vaporize and they would all drown. He'd have to eliminate that weakness in Robin at least. He liked her, and she was hot. Suddenly Sanji came back with a dinner. The moment he spotted me cuddling with Nami and Robin, he went apeshit crazy and attacked me, causing Nami and Robin to tense, even though I wasn't in any real danger. "Get your hands off my Nami-san and my Robin-schwan." He flew towards Naruto at a high speed before stopping suddenly as he came into contact with a barrier just before hitting Naruto. He then bounced off, clutching his leg in pain as the barrier had not even given an inch. Naruto chuckled merrily before his face turned serious, and he stood up, summoning his cloak and shirt, to the obvious diss of the 2 ladies he had been cuddling with. "All of you follow me, I have to show you something." They all followed him, although they were confused at his sudden change in demeanor. They walked through the halls of the palace for a while before they came to a dead end. When Naruto suddenly spoke, "Talon, open the crystal hatch." As soon as he finished, a robotic voice creaked through the entire ship. "Hi, Naruto-sama." And then the wall in front of them slid open quickly. Not a sound was made as the previous wall seemed to meld completely into the ceiling. Frankie was especially amazed by this, as he was the mechanic of the bunch. They then followed Naruto down a long twisting hallway, before they finally came into a large room that continued into the depths and extended at least 4 stories higher. In the middle of the room was a large cyan crystal, which glowed with a power none of them could understand. It filled most of the giant room, leaving them to wonder what a pure crystal that size was worth. After another minute of them gazing in wonder at the large crystal, Naruto finally spoke. "This is the power crystal. None of you must ever touch it or attempt to remove it from this chamber. This ship is designed and developed solely by me, therefore only I can touch this crystal. This is because if any mortal touches this crystal, the entire ship will instantly disappear along with the crystal, leaving you all to fall into the waters below. I designed it this way so that no one can steal my technology, which is obviously superior to anything pirates or marines may have. Now the reason I'm showing you this is that all four of you cannot swim, and as such if my ship disappears you will all drown. Now I've decided I like you guys and I don't want that to happen, especially not to Robin-chan. Do you understand? They all looked slightly unnerved but nodded. Upon a loud explosion was suddenly heard just outside the ship. Turning back, running instead of walking, they hurried out of the corridor, the door closing behind them as they left the secret walkway. Where they saw a guy in a striped yellow-orange suit with rockstar glassed firing lasers at the ship which were deflected by the barrier shield. Robin's eyes widened in horror. It was Admiral Kizaru. She had finally found someone she thought she could love, and now they were all going to die. He was said to be strongest of the admirals. Naruto stared passively at the admiral. He was going to have some fun with him. He commanded his ship in a firm tone. Talon, I'm going to have some fun with this admiral guy. As soon as I'm gone, activate the full reflector shields and only open them for me, and close the glass hull please. The robotic voice sounded again. As you wish, Naruto-sama. Nami and Robin gasped in horror as they heard Naruto say that. Was he going to fight an admiral? What if he died? What would they do? They were however shaken out of their reverie as Naruto kissed them both on the cheeks, causing them to gasp and blush. Bye ladies. Root for me, okay? Was all he said before he floated off the ship, while the two ladies could only utter muffled affirmatives. As soon as Naruto was 10 feet from the ship, an energy field sprung up and the glass hull materialized, leaving them protected as Naruto battled with the admiral. As soon as Naruto hit the ground, the admiral was right in front of him, staring him down before speaking. Ooh, are you the one who attacked the Tenryubito? Naruto looked at him with confusion on his face. It was evident that he didn't know what a Tenryubito was. I don't know what a Tenryubito is, but if you mean the guys with the helmets on their heads, then yes, I killed them. Those pathetic mortals were telling me that they were superior to me while they haven't done a single thing in their life but rape and enslave, and as such have lost all their right to live. The admiral just kept a blank look on his face, and after a long while of silence he finally spoke, twisting his face in a weird expression as he did. I see, I'm afraid I'm going to have to kill you then. May I have your name? You're not a registered pirate, are you? I'm Uzumaki Naruto, but you're not going to be able to kill me, Mr. Lightman. Kizaru suddenly appeared behind Naruto, before kicking him at light speed. Imagine his surprise when his leg was stopped by a hand, before being chopped off at the base by what looked like a dark red energy blade. Of course it wasn't lasting damage, but it was faster than he could react, and that's saying something for a guy that can go at light speed. Kizaru quickly reformed his leg from light particles but was once again surprised as Naruto held up his hand and a red thunderbolt flew out of it, nearly hitting Kizaru as a thunderbolt moves as fast as light. Naruto then summoned a jetpack in his hat. Looking cool while fighting is essential. He used his vastly enhanced jetpack to be at Kizaru's side in less than a second, before chopping him in half with an energy blade. Which looked quite cool, but otherwise it didn't really do anything since Kizaru could just reform his body, although that took a little time. Kizaru then quickly appeared behind Naruto, before shooting a laser at him, which he ducked under and gave Kizaru an elbow to the gut. Kizaru didn't expect that and it actually hurt a bit before his body dissolved into light, reappearing a little away from Naruto. He then lifted one leg to unleash his leg laser beam of death, but he never finished as Naruto gestured with one arm towards him and instantly from thin air in front of Naruto, over 40 black tendrils with arrowheads appeared and shot towards Kizaru, impaling him in several different places, including heart, brain, lungs and every other major veins, as well as piercing all the major joints at once, which once again proved to be useless as it only served to stop Kizaru from attacking. Kizaru suddenly reappeared behind Naruto and finally managed to land a kick on the young god, feeling even more shocked as his kick simply went through the young mon's head, so shocked that he forgot to activate his powers when the blonde backhanded him savagely across the face, sending him flying into a building 100 feet away. The Straw Hat couldn't believe their eyes. Not only was this blonde battling evenly with an admiral, he's doing it without receiving any damaging blows, just stopping his attacks like they were attacks from a little boy before landing his own strikes. But what was even more surprising was his combat efficiency. He didn't just strike his enemy in a random spot that he could reach. Every attack would be at the very least a debilitating blow and in any other case instantly lethal. If his opponent didn't have a Logia-type devil fruit, the admiral would have been dead after the first strike. The admiral, however, was not one to be crossed lightly either. His frightening attack speed and his very destructive blows would grind any lesser opponent to dust in mere seconds. His evasion was nothing to be mocked as he literally dissolved every time anything hit him. Naruto tensed as he felt the Admiral approach at incredible speeds. He was right, this fight would be fun after all. He hadn't had a challenge in ages. Kizaru appeared in front of Naruto again, this time lifting his finger and firing several lasers, which were avoided before Naruto landed a palm strike to his heart infused with Yuki. The Yuki influenced the light particles and as a result it took longer for Kizaru to reform, and even though no damage was apparent, Kizaru had a pained expression on his face. Naruto figured that he corrupted the light, and therefore it had to be cleansed before Kizaru could reform, which apparently hurt. He grinned maliciously, which sent shivers up Kizaru's spine, before he darted off at a high speed, slamming his fist into Kizaru, who immediately dissolved into light, but right at that moment he released a huge blast of Yuki, completely corrupting the light particles, and making Kizaru go through a large amount of pain when he finally reformed. His reforming actually cost 30 seconds this time, and he looked really confused and in pain at the same time. Naruto almost wanted to laugh at his expression, but decided not to, since anger might make the fight less fun for him. Darting forward he immediately went for a clothesline, but he was evaded and got hit by Kizaru in the back of the neck. The strike would have beheaded him, but Naruto made it pass through him without inflicting any damage. Naruto then turned around and decided to mess with Kizaru's head, so he held up one finger and started firing laser beams at the Admiral. It worked like a charm, because as soon as he did, Kizaru froze in place. It was not shocking enough to keep him from dissolving into light wherever the beams hit, but he didn't move at all and he had a shocked expression on his face. Naruto committed it to his memory so he could make a picture of it later. Kizaru could not believe it. How could this young man copy his powers? Now that he thought about it, the kid had been doing a lot of weird things. He could shoot lightning bolts, stop his lightspeed kick with one hand, form a blade in midair, create black arrow thingies. He could even cause him pain when he reformed. Nobody had ever been able to do that. And now he just copies his laser beams. If the guy lived through the fight, he'd really have to talk to Sengoku about this one. Tell me, boy, why are you a pirate? You don't look like such a bad guy. Naruto stopped firing laser beams and snapped his fingers, causing his hat, shirt and cloak to appear, shocking the Marine Admiral once again. All those powers and more? Damn, the kid was quite unbeatable as it was, but now it didn't seem like he had a chance. I'm not a pirate, Mr. Lightman. Then why are you helping those pirates escape from the government? Well, two reasons actually. One, they're my kind of people. They're against rape and slavery. They don't kill people without reason and they seem to have honor. They're decent people if you get past the childhood dream of becoming king of the pirates their captain has. They're part of the admittedly small amount of decent humans alive. I don't want to have them get killed just because you people see anyone calling themselves pirates evil. The world is not black and white, almost anything is a shade of gray. The second reason is the two girls in the crew. They're smokin' hot, they're into me. I'm into them. I haven't had any for 2 weeks, well yeah. Kizaru had to admit, the boy had a point. Well, the first point anyway, but as a man he couldn't really disagree with the second reason either. They were quite attractive. But nonetheless, no matter how much sense this boy's belief is, he was still a Marine, and he still had a job to do. Kizaru sighed. He really didn't want to do this, but if he didn't, the Sengoku would have his head for allowing the man that killed 3 of the 10 Ryubito to escape. You have a good point, kid, I'll give you that, but if I don't kill you my boss'll have my head, so I guess we'll have to fight again. Naruto already decided that he had had his fun for today. It was time to finish this. I'm sorry, man, but I've got to finish this before more of your lackeys arrive. I won't kill you though, I have a feeling we'll meet again. Naruto quickly used his powers to completely shut off Kizaru's access to his devil fruit, and before he could register it, Naruto was already upon him, firing 3 small laser beams. One went through his shoulder, another went through his lung, and the final one went through his ankle. Dr. Vegapunk would be able to heal it, but it effectively put him out of the fight. Kizaru was at a loss for words. 1 second this kid tells him that he has to finish the fight and the next he can't use his devil fruit anymore. And within 3 seconds he was simply destroyed by the kid. And he had the idea that the kid could have easily done worse. Oh yeah, he was definitely going to have to talk to Sengoku about this one. Naruto floated back to the ship, and the hull and shield opened for him, allowing him to safely land on the boat. after which the Straw Hat were immediately upon him. Luffy and Chopper were saying how awesome he was, Zoro and Sanji were looking at him with respect. Usopp was looking at him in awe. Brook was telling skull jokes, Frankie was ranting about Suppa, and Nami and Robin were at his side in a blink as he wrapped his arms around their waists. Nami was half-heartedly yelling at him while Robin was just happy to be close to him. After they had all calmed down, Naruto decided that it was time to get underway. He was quite interested in this Fishman Island. An island underwater where humans can walk around was unique to say the least. It was something he just had to see. So guys, what say we go to Fishman Island? I mean, I want to spend time with you, so we're not going to go fast, but I think it's best we leave before more Marines come and attack us. Nami-chan, could you point me in the general direction of Fishman Island? Nami took a look at the log pose, before nodding and saying, "It's to the diagonally left and forward of the ship, and the downwards at a 65-degree angle, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded to her before saying, "Talon, did you hear that?" "Yes, Naruto-sama, I heard." "Alright, detect a concentration of intelligent life in that direction. It has been found, Naruto-sama. Then set a course towards the coordinates at a leisurely pace and warn me when ETA is less than 1 hour." Hi. Instantly the ship started to move, although no sounds of the engine could be heard. And since they weren't standing inside, they could see the water starting to rise at the edge of the hull. It was a weird experience for the Straw Hat. They felt like they were standing in a sinking ship. As the water rose to the top, Nami and Robin covertly grabbed Naruto closer, out of slight fear of what would happen if this wasn't actually supposed to happen. After a few minutes the boat was entirely underwater. Frankie was the first to speak. "Naruto Aniki, how is it that the engine doesn't make a sound, yet we still move?" Naruto looked at him with a slight smile on his face, glad that someone was showing interest in how things worked. "That's because it's a special engine. I call it a cold fusion engine. It is based on the principle that if we compress the two of the smallest building blocks of all matter called atoms together under a very high temperature, that they will fuse together and create one atom, releasing a huge amount of energy in the process. The energy is then led through a filter that will instantly cool down the energy to a temperature just above 0 degrees Celsius, which is then used to power turbines, eliminating the need for noisy cooling machines. The beauty of it is that once the process has started, it will not end until no matter is left to fuse, and since my power crystal can create matter from nothing as long as I power it, it makes for the perfect way to move quickly and silently, since no stops are ever needed to replenish fuel." Frankie was marveling at the prospect of such an engine, but also slightly sad since he couldn't add it to the Thousand Sunny, but Naruto wasn't finished talking yet. "The cool part is that this ship can go much faster than this. It can go at 9 times the speed of sound, but I won't do that since your bodies can't handle it, and except for Luffy you'd probably all die. Oh, and my ship can fly, since it's just that awesome. But again, unless I make a ship especially for you, you can't really recreate my technology, since without the power crystal that only I know how to make, none of this would work." Now Frankie was drooling. A ship that could fly and go super fast? The possibilities and practical applications that could have was astounding. Now Frankie understood why Naruto had designed his technology so that no one could ever steal it. If the Marines ever got a hold of that kind of technology, they would annihilate the pirates within weeks. It would tip the entire power balance in favor of its owner. But that also means that combined with the frightening level of skill he has displayed in battle so far, that if they make him angry there is no doubt they would die. He supposed it was actually lucky that Nami and Robin had taken a liking to him very quickly, and that he seemed to have the hots for them too. According to Luffy, however, they didn't have much to be afraid of. Naruto had stated that he really only disliked rapists and slavers, and from his actions they had ascertained that he also didn't like it when people demanded things from him. Then Naruto spoke again. "Anyway guys, I'm going to go to the onsen. Anyone want to join me? And ladies, it's a mixed gender since I'm really the only person on this ship, so you might want to go get a bikini or something if you decide to go." Robin, Luffy, Chopper and Brook declined since they were devil fruit users. Although Robin seemed reluctant to decline, she wanted to spend some time with Naruto. Usopp wanted to go look at the fish outside, so he declined as well. Zoro wasn't interested, he wanted to sleep instead. Sanji declined since he wanted to get started on dinner, and Frankie wanted to go look around the ship. Nami, seeing her chance to be alone with Naruto in an onsen, agreed to come, secretly pleasing Naruto greatly. Naruto snapped his fingers and was suddenly in his swimming boxers, and after showing Nami the onsen he proceeded to go in and relax himself. No matter how powerful you are, it's still nice to relax after a long day. The hot water caressed his skin as he slowly descended into the perfectly warm water, relishing in the feeling of his muscles unwinding from all today's excitement. He had traveled to a new world, met some interesting people, killed someone important, fought Mr. Lightman, and invited previously mentioned people onto his boat for a ride to Fishman Island. He had to admit that even though he loved his new life as a god, sometimes his exciting life tired him. Not that he's complaining though, why would anyone complain that they have become a god? As the steam rose it made it quite difficult for him to see anything, and because it didn't really bother him he left it that way. It really wasn't a surprise to him when suddenly two soft arms wrapped around him and a young supply body was pressed against his own. And a sudden husky voice broke the silence. "Hello Naruto-kun," he replied with an affectionate greeting before he wrapped his own arms around her, putting a bit more pressure on it so that she was pulled closer to him, chuckling lightly as she moaned a bit from the closeness of their bodies. He softly raked one hand through her hair, relishing in its smooth softness as Nami simply lay against him and enjoyed the simple but pleasurable action. After she had gotten used to this however, she wanted more. She had finally found a guy she liked as more than a friend, and even though she knew that Robin would think the same way and that he would not stop her, for some reason she didn't seem to mind as the feeling in the pit of her stomach told her to just go for it, and to finally make a shot at a measure of true love. As the silence grew deafening, she spread her legs a bit, allowing herself to straddle him slightly, even though they were still sitting up. As he looked at her with a questioning glance she took her chance. She neared her face to his and then she placed a light, but passionate kiss on his lips. Her mind was running at 1,000 miles an hour as the touch from his lips seemed akin to that of pure electricity. The of such electricity was making her feel all weak even when the kiss itself was akin to a peck on the lips. Naruto then reacted, tilting his head to deepen the kiss, and as she gasped from the increase he slipped his tongue into her mouth, while using one hand on the back of her head to pull her closer, and the other to slowly but firmly massage her ass. The reaction he got was immediate as she let out a loud moan into his mouth. Large surges of electricity were racking her nerve system as she had never had such a passionate kiss before, the warmth from the onsen making it impossible for her body to release its added heat causing her to feel all hot inside. Her tongue darted around his in a dance of passion. She brought one of her hands up to his face weakly as her body was too focused on receiving more to actually think. After a while of passionate kissing they broke away, Nami sitting peacefully in Naruto's lap. Both just relaxing in the steaming water of the onsen. Suddenly, Naruto broke the silence. "Nami-chan, if you could wish for any one thing, what would you wish for?" Nami put her finger on her chin in thought, and after a while she finally spoke, her face having turned a bit sad from unpleasant memories. "If I could wish for anything, it would be that my mother, Belmere-san, would be alive again." Naruto closed his eyes in concentration, and after short time he finally managed to contact her through a telepathic connection. "Kami-chan, do you have a person named Belmere under your wing? I wish to bring her back." It was silent for a while but after about a minute he finally got a response. "Yes I do Naruto-kun, but I can allow you to take her to the world of the living. She made a pact with me to serve me in death if her daughter's lives were guaranteed to not end untimely. I can allow you to borrow her for an hour though." "Thanks Kami-chan." Naruto looked at Nami who was giving a questioning look at his long silence before he told her. "Well Nami-chan, I'm sorry but I can't bring your mother back to life. I can allow you to meet her for an hour though." Nami's eyes widened in disbelief and hope. How could he possibly do that? Her face turned slightly teary as she answered. "Really Naruto-kun?" "Yes." And after he spoke that word his eyes closed in concentration, the air becoming heavy with a divine power as he concentrated on calling forth Belmere's soul. In a sudden flash of light a body materialized, complete with bikini as it fell into the onsen. About 10 seconds later it popped out of the water, revealing the happy face of Belmere. Nami's face instantly cleared up as she saw that he actually did it. In tears she hugged her late mother tightly, which was happily returned. She could just hear Naruto say in a soft voice, "Belmere, Nami-chan, you've got 1 hour before Belmere needs to return to Kami. Enjoy your time, I'll leave you two alone." Naruto left the onsen with a smile on his face, Changing with a snap of his fingers, he walked through the bright hallways of his palace towards Robin's room. Knocking on the door softly, he was surprised when Robin opened the door in a white nightgown that clung to her body, showing off her sensual curves. She had a book in one hand, that was dropped as soon as she saw who it was at her door this evening. A heavy blush decorating her face, highlighting her slim cheeks quite nicely. Naruto-kun, what are you doing here? How was the onsen? Naruto just smiled a heartbreaker smile, making her stomach flutter as her face became flushed. Robin-chan, the onsen was quite nice actually. You know, I knew that nobody but Nami and me would go to the onsen. Robin's face grew sad and a single tear escaped from her eyes no matter how much she tried to hold it back. Didn't he want her just as much as he wanted Nami? Maybe he decided that he didn't really like her silent demeanor and thus chose to abandon her altogether even though she would have been content with sharing. She finally spoke, her tone betraying her sadness as her voice wavered slightly from unshed tears. Then why? Why Naruto-kun? Why would you propose it if you knew I couldn't come? Did you decide that you didn't want me? Did you decide you desired only Nami and not me? Why? He smiled lovingly at her, making her sad like this was a terrible feeling for him, but she would only be happier if she realized what she thought was wrong. So he just kept his warm smile on his face as he responded to her once more. I wanted some alone time. Just as she was about to slam the door shut and burst out in tears, he stepped closer to her, closing the door behind him as he wrapped his arms around her tightly, before bringing his mouth to her ear and whispering softly into it. With both of you, Robin-chan, could you really be so foolish that you could even think that I would not desire you? I actually feel a bit offended that you would think that I could be so blind as to not even notice you. I simply gave Nami a gift that I'm sure she would enjoy better if we let her completely alone. She'll be really happy tomorrow, you'll see. And I hope that if you allow me, that you'll be happy tomorrow as well. Robin's sad frown instantly turned into a grin at his words. She felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had just been lifted from her shoulders. She sighed contentedly as she leaned into his embrace, his intoxicating warmth spreading freely through her body, filling her every fiber and sending her into a happy daze. Just happy that he desired her, and just happy to be there in his arms. She was pulled roughly out of her reverie when he lifted her up, gently laying her upon her bed, before he lay down next to her, never once releasing her from his arms. He then pulled her closer, and planted his lips on hers, sending a huge shock of electricity through her, causing her to let out a delighted moan which was muffled by his mouth. He slipped his tongue into her mouth, and for the second time that night he ensued in an epic battle of love, which eventually left Robin drooling and unable to think clearly as it ended. And before long, Naruto asked her the same question he asked Nami. Robin-chan, if you could wish for any one thing, what would it be? Robin didn't even have to think, she just looked him straight in the eye, fighting against her need to kiss him again, struggling to answer his question normally. Naruto-kun, I want to learn about the blank century, the time of which no history is known, that is my dream. Naruto was silent for a good long while, contemplating on what to do. He could of course let her see the blank century, but then he would be taking her dream away. After the excitement of knowing everything had waned, what would she do with the rest of her life? He finally decided that he would wait a while before deciding if he would fulfill her dream for her. And spoke to her. I'm sorry Robin-chan, but I will not grant you that wish. I cannot just accomplish your dream for you here and now. I am much too afraid that you would lose your sense of purpose and after the excitement wears off, that you would be unhappy. I will however grant you a gift. Something unique in this world. She was slightly sad but he did raise a good point. On second thought she didn't really want someone to just hand her the answer. Maybe if she really couldn't figure it out, but not know, what would she do afterwards? She couldn't really think of anything solid to do with her life after she had accomplished her dream. But she wondered what she was going to get. And just like any other girl would she turned instantly giddy. And what is that Naruto-kun? He smiled at her, happy that she took it well. He really didn't want her to be sad but he just didn't want to make her insanely happy for a week, if it ruins the rest of her life. I'm going to remove the weakness of your devil fruit. I'm going to give you the chance to swim again, then we could go to the onsen together. And you will always have the element of surprise since no one will suspect that you can swim. She couldn't believe he could do that. But suddenly she got a weird bubbly feeling inside of her, and in a flash she was in a tank with water up to her neck. She panicked, thinking she is going to drown, but she could actually stand. She couldn't believe it, he had actually done it. He had successfully removed the weakness of the devil fruit without even having to do a single scientific test. She was truly amazed, and thankful to him for what he had done for her, the one person the whole world hated. After she was out of the tank and dried off, she just smiled at him and kissed him deeply, hoping that the kiss would somehow convey how thankful she felt right now. After he was done cuddling with Robin, he sneaked into Zoro's room, setting a trap for him, making sure that he was awakened rather rudely, before he sneaked out of his room. Closing the door softly behind him, he walked through the halls towards his master bedroom. Lying down under the sheets, he relished in the softness of the bed as he slowly drifted off to sleep. As Zoro woke up in the morning, he found something tickling his face. With an annoyed look on his face, his eyes still closed, he lifted up his hand to grab it. It seemed to be some kind of rope dangling in his face. He quickly pulled it away when he heard something move, and suddenly, splash! Zoro was entirely soaked and vowed to find the one person that was responsible for this blasphemy. He stormed out of the room, only to find Naruto and the entire crew waiting for him. After Zoro had woken up, Naruto gathered the entire Straw Hat crew in the dining hall and made an announcement. Everyone, I have decided I like you guys, so I'll give you each something for 2 reasons. 1, I like you, I don't want you guys to die. 2, to be able to protect Nami and Robin if necessary, because if you let either of them die, I'll come and kill ya. They all looked excited. You could feel the wonders of what they would get flowing of them in waves. Naruto walked up to the reindeer man, holding a bottle of 250 milliliters in his hands. Chopper, as the doctor of this crew, I depend on you to keep them all healthy, and because of that I have given you a medicine that will cure any disease instantly with only 1 drop. The doctor's jaw dropped into the deck, and he accepted the bottle with stars in his eyes, while saying that he wasn't happy and that they were all idiots. After smiling at the young reindeer, Naruto walked up to Brook. I think I will do everyone a favor by giving you your flesh back. And before their eyes, organs started growing. His head was enveloped by skin as his eyes and nose regrew. His torso wasn't entirely skinned by now, and the rest of the flesh was quickly regaining its normal color. After a minute had passed, Brook was standing in his full alive glory, causing the entire Straw Hat crew to drop their jaws into the ground in amazement, before Brook started crying in happiness, and began trying to hug Naruto in his state, which caused Naruto to hit him over the head. After the small break, Naruto walked up to Zoro, and took his swords in his hands. The swords glowed white for a moment before they returned to their normal color. Only a black swirl had appeared on their hilts. Naruto gave Zoro the swords back and told him what he did. I have blessed your swords, now they can cut through almost everything, and they will feel like they are a part of your body. Zoro nodded in thanks, a slight smile on his face as he watched Naruto move on to the next person. Sanji watched in anticipation as he wondered what he would get. As the cook of this ship, I am counting on you to feed everyone food with enough nutrients to keep them healthy, but you are also one of the main fighters, therefore you get 2 gifts. I will bless your legs so that you can run faster, and kick way harder than you were able to before. And I will give you a tome with all the recipes that I know. There's over 3,000 recipes in there, as well as new cooking techniques. Naruto nodded and Sanji's legs suddenly grew stronger. They glowed a bright white until a moment later Sanji felt it way easier to stand. It was like he weighed nothing. Another nod later, a book the size of several encyclopedias put together appeared in Sanji's hands. Naruto walked towards Luffy next, who had stars in his eyes at all the cool gifts they got. Naruto lifted up his arm and a black energy blade popped out. Then the blade disappeared and a beautiful golden bracelet appeared in his hands, which he then gave to Luffy. Because you're the captain, you will also get 2 gifts. One is this bracelet, which can call out an energy blade like the ones I use. Second is I will access another dormant ability you have, and give you the knowledge on how to control it. It is called Haki. Naruto then poked Luffy in the forehead, instantly accessing his ability and learning him how to control it. Luffy then flashed his bright smile and thanked Naruto exuberantly. Naruto then walked up to Usopp, who was literally trembling at what he would receive. Naruto then held both his hands up and formed a sniper rifle in it. As the sharpshooter of the crew, I think this would be a most fitting gift for you. This is called a sniper rifle. It holds an unlimited amount of bullets that can shoot through a marine battleship, and if you can correct for bullet weight, distance, and wind, you can shoot someone from several miles away with it. You simply look through the scope on top and aim it at the enemy's head. then you pull the trigger and bam. Dead. Usopp nodded enthusiastically in thanks. He couldn't wait to try the sniper rifle out on some Marines. They thought he could shoot far before? Ha, this baby can shoot 20 times as far as his Kabuto. Naruto walked up to Frankie and said, and last but certainly not least, Frankie. I will give you a chance I will never give anyone again, but you must swear on your honor as a mechanic that you will no tinker with it or try to reverse engineer it. Can you promise me that? Frankie thought about it for a little while before he nodded, all traces of his normal exuberant attitude completely gone as he swore an oath. Naruto then gave him a warm smile. Alright then, I will give you some of my technology. I will give you one of the weapons I designed myself. It is basically a laser that shoots a solid ray of white light that can cut through anything at a distance. Think of it as a bullet that always goes right through the target regardless of armor and may even go through the targets behind the target. If you use it with this special prism I included, the beam will split into several smaller beams, essentially making it a long-range version of the shotgun. Frankie's left arm glowed white and a new compartment was added. Frankie looked like he was in ecstasy at the mere mention of that level of technology, but nodded anyway and said his thanks. At that moment a sudden alarm was heard and the robotic voice of the Talon rang through the entire ship. Naruto-sama, we're under attack. The Marines have coded ships that are launching some kind of missiles at us. They seem to be propelling themselves in the water using some primitive version of a turbine. Naruto thought for a second, trying to decide on the way he could have the most fun with this situations. Talon, how many ships are there? There are at present 10 ships after us, Naruto-sama. Alright then, I have modified 10 mantis to be able to fight underwater, send them out. Hi, Naruto-sama. The Straw Hat watched in awe as a hatch to the side of the ship opened and 10 white figures shaped like a praying mantis shot out, darting out towards the ship. Their energy blades glowing dangerously in the dark of the deep sea. They watched on in horror as all the mantis did was slice open the bubble coating of the marine ship, immediately negating the entire coating, and crushing the Marines along with their ships, to oblivion due to the water pressure. The mantis shot back into the ship, and within 2 minutes of the start of the confrontation, everything was at peace again, the attack having been shrugged off like it was a toddler attacking a giant tank. Being inside of a ship that powerful, made them feel at ease even when they were 3,000 miles under the surface. Alright, what did y'all think? I actually wanted to get the entire One Piece arc done in one chapter, but I have a feeling if I get more hits if I just upload slightly smaller chapters regularly. As Naruto slowly woke from his slumber, a bit later than he would normally awaken since underwater there was no sunlight, and the only thing that tells you if it's night or day is the clock. He came out of bed slowly, rubbing his eyes sleepily, before he finally got up. Slowly moving towards a cozy room he called the breakfast room. As he entered he saw Robin sitting on the couch, being the only person who was normally up at this hour. Naruto sleepily walked over to her, and she only just noticed him before he lay down on the couch, his head ending up on her lap, to which she smiled. He snuggled deeper into her lap, savoring the gentle warmth and softness of her thighs, murmuring sleepy sounds as she caressed his scalp with her hands, making Naruto purr. He could feel himself drifting off to sleep, but before he went he put one of his hands under her legs, and hugged her stoach with the other, giving her a more comfortable position as well as giving himself the added warmth of her stomach as well. He murmured his thanks to Robin as he finally fell asleep, to which her smile simply grew wider as she kept raking her hand through his hair. Her book lay forgotten as she simply watched him sleep. After Naruto woke up again, Robin refused to let anyone wake him up. They all had breakfast. As usual it was a chaos for everyone but 3 of the people present. One was Naruto because he would brutally mutilate anyone who touched his food, the other 2 were Robin and Nami, because now there were TWO people who would beat on the offender. Naruto materialized the paper in his hands, and skimmed through the articles for something interesting, and when he found one he felt compelled to share it with the Straw Hats. Hey guys, there's apparently going to be some kind of pirate war between Whitebeard and the world government. Everyone was interested in that so they all stopped eating and listened to what he had to say. Apparently the Marines caught some guy named Portgas Diaz and they're going to execute him in 2 days at Marineford, and Whitebeard is guaranteed to try and stop them from doing so. It's guaranteed to be quite an event to behold. As the name Portgas Diaz was spoken the room turned deathly quiet, the expressions of Luffy, Usopp, Chopper and Nami were ones of horror. Sanji and Zoro looked shocked. Naruto looked up from the paper at the eerie silence filling the room. Something wrong? He asked them, as he was pretty confused over the extreme reaction to the article. Luffy, as energetic as ever, shouted, his face contorted in anger at the thought of the Marines killing Ace. Ace is my older brother. We had to go save him. Naruto just gave him a blank stare before he raised one eyebrow. And is this brother of yours a rapist or slaver? Luffy shook his head and Nami pleaded with Naruto. Please Naruto-kun, you have to help us save Ace. Well, I don't know, but if he's a good person he should be saved, and I do kinda want to see this battle. And maybe I'll meet someone interesting, plus Nami-chan asked. Alright, I guess I'll help you. They cheered and Naruto decided on a course of action. Talon, do you remember the chakra signature of Mr. Lightman? Yes I do Naruto-sama. Alright, we rise from the water in 30 minutes, and we set off towards Mr. Lightman's chakra signature through the skies at an altitude of 12 kilometers, and we will move at 1,200 kilometers per hour. Hi. Suddenly the ship stopped moving, which caused everyone to jump slightly, before the ship started moving towards the surface at a frightening pace, causing them all to feel like they were being pressed against the floor by an elephant. After a while though they got used to it and they watched as the water grew brighter and brighter as they neared the surface. Suddenly they shot from the water and the Straw Hat gasped as they ran towards the edge of the ship. Their faces set in childish wonder as the ship rose higher and higher, until they were about as high as Skypia. Then Naruto told them to hold onto something and as they did Naruto gave the okay for the next action. Suddenly a high-pitched noise could be heard and it got higher and higher until it suddenly stopped. Then the turbines started turning and were soon turning at about 1/9 of their max speed. Naruto then turned back to the breakfast table and resumed his breakfast as they were underway towards Marineford. He had a great time since everyone, even Luffy, was too busy gawking at the height, speed and scenery to even think about food. After breakfast Naruto acted like he was napping in Robin's lap again, while actually just savoring the warmth and planning out his acts for when he finally chose to deal with Konoha and the elemental countries. Oh yeah, he had a lot to do. At Marineford, Sengoku's office. Kizaru walked into the office, and waited for Sengoku to notice him, which took very long. After 10 minutes he sweat dropped and coughed, startling Sengoku as he had no idea anybody was there. When he saw Kizaru looking official he was confused. Kizaru wasn't a person to formally report on anything. Sengoku supposed that the incident on Shibandi had shaken the admiral more than he had realized. It wasn't every day that 3 of the 10 Ryubito were killed and that an admiral wasn't fast enough to capture the offenders. Especially Kizaru, he had always been the fastest person alive, no one had ever escaped his grasp. Thinking that it was best to let the admiral get his feelings of his chest, he motioned for Kizaru to speak. And after a moment of hesitation he did. Sengoku, there is something you need to know. At Shibandi Archipelago, I wasn't too slow to catch the perpetrator. Sengoku's eyes widened. What could this mean? Did it mean that Kizaru was beaten? Was he outsmarted or did he let them go? After calming himself he waited for Kizaru to continue, which he soon did. I was beaten Sengoku. This kid, Uzumaki Naruto, incapacitated me without me landing a single blow on him. He could even catch my lightspeed kick. Sengoku's eyes widened further as he dropped the pen he was holding in shock. How could some unknown person who had never even been seen before beat one of the 3 admirals with apparent ease? It just wasn't possible. What kind of ability must he have for that to happen? What? He cried in outrage. How could that happen? What kind of ability does he have for that to be possible? Kizaru frowned and explained. Well, that's just the problem. He seems to have multiple abilities at the very least, and one that is very disturbing to all 3 of the admirals. Just from what I've seen he can move extremely fast, hit extremely hard, form energy blades, shoot thunder from his hands, shoot black tendrils that pierce flesh easily, and, now here it gets disturbing, he fired lasers from his hands, and a moment later he somehow made me unable to use my ability at all. Sengoku stood up, his face contorted in an expression of outrage, before yelling at the top of his voice. What? How the hell is that possible? You know it's impossible to have multiple abilities. How can this even be? After Sengoku had sufficiently calmed himself he continued. Alright, this is grave indeed. Now he have a pirate that is able to beat any of the 3 admirals with relative ease thanks to his powers, and on top of that he killed 3 of the 10 Ryubito, so making him a Shichibukai is out of the question. How can we defend the peace if another evil pirate has shown up, this time with the ability to overpower the Marines? What's his name? Kizaru? We had to give him a high bounty. His name is Naruto Uzumaki, but that's not my point, Sengoku. I don't think he's evil. He even told me that he wasn't a pirate. He just stated that he hated rapists and slavers, which would explain why the only persons he's killed are the 3 Tenryubito. From what I've heard, he also gets really ticked off if people think they're better than him or demand anything from him. At present he has taken in the Straw Hat, according to him, because they're against rape and enslavement and they got hot girls. From an intelligence report he seems to have a way with all women. Sengoku thought about it for a while, and if the boy really liked the woman of the Straw Hat, then they might convince him to help free Portgas Dace, because he is Luffy's brother. But if the boy really went for every pretty woman, then Boa Hancock and Sergeant Major Tashigi might be able to get him on their side, or at least remain neutral. Thank you, Kizaru. Would you please tell my secretary to call in Boa Hancock and Sergeant Major Tashigi? Kizaru nodded and left after telling Sengoku's secretary to call in the aforementioned 2 women. It took a while and Sengoku was starting to get a bit irritated, but the women finally entered, although Boa had an arrogant look on her face. Sengoku sighed, wondering how he was going to bring the news to them, before deciding to just cut straight to the chase. Ladies, we have a problem. About 3 days ago a previously unknown man took out 3 of the Tenryubito because he hates rapists and slavers. However, he is not actually against the world government. He simply hates the aforementioned sorts of people, as well as people who demand things from him or view themselves as superior. Now the reason that this is a problem, since normally we would just have an admiral kill him, was that Kizaru was sent out to capture him for killing the Tenryubito, and Kizaru was beaten. Looks of shock, awe and fear crossed the faces of the 2 ladies. It wasn't every day that an unknown person took out an admiral. What they were more interested in, however, was how this concerned them directly. After all, when you're preparing for an all-out war with the Whitebeard pirates, you didn't have time to worry about anyone else. Even if that person was strong enough to beat an admiral, they simply didn't have enough manpower to worry about anything else right now. So why was Sengoku bringing this up? Sengoku, seeing the gears turn in their heads after he let the information sink in, decided to continue. Now the reason why I am telling you this is that I believe that he will come here for the battle between Whitebeard and the Marines. The reason I believe this is that while he doesn't seem to care much for the plute of random people he meets, he has taken in Monkey D. Luffy, who, as you know, is the Borther of Portgas Dace. The reason I believe he's coming here is that he has a certain thing with women that makes them attracted to him, but he also seems to be bored a lot and is dying for interesting happenings, and it seems women interest him, if you know what I mean. I think that the 2 women on the Strafat's crew have convinced him to come here and help them save Ace from the execution. The eyes of the ladies widened. The guy who can beat an admiral might be coming here to oppose them in an already uncertain battle. They truly felt that they were unlucky to have the possible risk of having to face such a man in battle. But why was Sengoku telling them this? The only thing this would do was bring their morales down, and that would in turn decrease their effectiveness in battle against the man he mentioned? Sensing the slight despair in their minds, Sengoku debated on how to continue. He could just give them their orders, but in order to maximize their effectiveness he would have to explain exactly why he wanted them to follow them. According to the powers that Kizaru mentioned, none of the admirals or even me stand much of a chance against the boy, and while he may not wish us any direct harm, his presence, and the rescue of Ace could ruin our entire plan. Now seeing that he was convinced by 2 rather attractive women to come here, I think it would be best for us to not try to combat someone as powerful as him, because if he does permanently take the side of the pirates, the possibilities of us losing this war is very possible. And as such you are to seduce him if possible, or at least keep him from attacking us. And according to eyewitness reports it won't be hard to notice him, since the female witnesses said that he had an air around him that made them want to submit themselves to him in lust, and that they would do anything for his love. And as for why I told you to seduce him instead of lure him in and kill him, he is way too powerful to let go to waste. If you can get him close to you, you might be able to get him on our side. The only problem with this plan is that if we don't keep him interested he will probably leave. That is why, at least until we are able to ship in a few regular beautiful females, or convince any of the admirals to spar with him, since he seemed to be quite interested in the admirals. You are to act like you are in love with him, However, if you actually do love him, you may continue to stay with him for as long as you like. Do you understand? They both looked slightly outraged by being used as bargaining tools, but they understood the danger. Boa, not as loyal as Toshigi, took comfort in the fact that since this guy apparently hated slavers and rapists, he would probably not take advantage of her unless she would let him do so. It was entirely logical to her that she, the most beautiful woman in existence, would be quite useful in convincing this unknown man to take the side of the Marines. And as much as she hated allowing someone to touch her, she understood that she had no choice. If she refused, the island of Amazon Lily would be decimated by the Marines for supporting pirates. So she simply nodded at her orders, refusing to actually dignify that with a spoken answer. Her, the most beautiful woman on earth, being forced to act like a common slut in order to save the Marines' asses. Much later, day of the war between Whitebeard and the Marines. After a long time of flying in the ship, they were finally pretty close to Marineford. The long flight was actually quite pleasant due to the pleasurable company of two beautiful ladies, as well as the interesting antics that the Straw Hats would often display. As they moved closer, they saw what appeared to be a huge battle taking place. Giant walls of ice were keeping in the pirates as, on the inside of the ice walls, a siege wall was raised, filled with cannons. The only good thing for the pirates at that point was that one section of the siege wall was unable to rise due to the fact that some kind of giant was laying for dead right on top of it. As they neared, Naruto went over some final things with the Straw Hat, who were all currently gathered near the front of the deck, so that they could see the battle going on from a distance. The amazement that they were flying had long since passed. "Alright you guys, I promise to help you, but I will be taking care of everything. This interests me and I have a few tricks up my sleeve in case things get out of hand. You will stay inside of the ship. If any of you die, Nami and Robin will be sad and I will not allow you to fight. If you refuse or try to disobey, I will paralyze you completely until the fight is over. Understood?" The Straw Hat just nodded in slight fear of his suddenly serious demeanor. While they knew he meant well, it sounded more like a threat to them, but they decided to obey his will. It was not like they were powerful enough to challenge him anyways. Naruto nodded at their agreement and psyched himself up for the fight that was soon to follow. With Whitebeard, Edward Newgate was worried. This entire battle had been a mystery. The Marines were just pulling one trick after another out of their sleeves. The battle was actually looking quite grim for the pirates, considering the damage the army of Pacifista was doing to their forces. And to be made worse, the Shichibukai were currently fighting with all their might. The three admirals were also busy decimating loads of pirates. Even though they had a completely different level of strength compared to the pirates in the first half of the Grand Line, they just couldn't compare to the training and respective abilities that the three possessed. The only actual battle that seemed to have a chance of them winning against the three was Marco the Phoenix Varus Akainu, since Marco's Phoenix abilities allowed him to combat the heat of Akainu's magma. He was soon shocked out of his worries though as the skies grew dark. A huge ship gliding through the air and stopping about 300 meters above Marineford. His jaw dropped open as he realized that a ship was just hovering in midair. With the Marines, battle stopped as the shadow fell over the battlefield. All looked up in curious and apprehensive glances as a new faction seems to have joined the battle. They all gaped in shock and amazement as a huge ship seemed to stop in the middle of the sky. Sengoku gaped in incomprehension. How was this possible? Who was the commander of that ship? Was it Naruto? If it was, then he had grossly underestimated the level of technology he possessed, and that could cause him severe problems. If this Naruto was intelligent enough to create something like this, who is to say that he's not too smart to fall for a simple seduction? He was shocked out of this disturbing thoughts when an otherworldly voice rang through the air, a screen in the bottom hull showing a picture of Naruto speaking. "Surrender now, you are outmatched. Both Marines and pirates will stop the battle now. Or I will initiate the attack." The short-lasted silence in the battle was soon over after the announcement as everyone began screaming in defiance. Screaming that they were the Whitebeard pirates, or the elite Marines respectively, and that they would not surrender to some nobody who nobody had heard from before. The Naruto just sighed and raised one eyebrow, before shrugging off their unfortunate fate, and addressed his ship. "Talon, ready my forces for launch. Fire the lightning cannon to disable the siege wall, and then open the rocket pods and decimate at least half of them." A metallic affirmative was heard before a segment at the bottom of the ship began to glow an eerie blue, before a hatch opened, revealing a fully charged energy beam. For a moment everyone could feel the weird sparkly feeling of the charge being fired at the wall. Suddenly a humongous bolt of lightning shot out and hit the siege wall head-on. The immense heat melted the wall like it was an ice sculpture. Some screams were heard from the Marines inside of the wall being electrocuted, but they were quickly silenced as molten stone encompassed them entirely. All present didn't even have time to gape in wonder as suddenly about 10,000 hatches opened in the bottom of the ship, before tens of thousands of missiles came flying out, leaving a dark blue trail behind as they sped towards the ground. There was no time to dodge. All of the missiles hit the ground and in a single huge explosion, 80% of the Marines and pirates were taken out. All of the remaining forces were stammering in shock, amazement, and fear at the power that was unleashed with just a command from Naruto. Suddenly a multitude of pods shot out from the ship at incredible speeds, burying themselves into the ground until only the door remained above ground, which soon shot open and revealed various forces totaling around 2,000 in number. A second later a bright beam shot from the Talon into the ground, even as the hatches on the side of the giant ship slid open, instantly followed up by hundreds of locusts swarming out of the ship, intimidating the enemy even more. As the bright beam hit the ground, 3 giant 6-armed robots appeared. That alone was more than enough to scare both factions into submission. The locusts stood still in the air, awaiting the possible order to attack. The most intimidating, however, was when the ninja, mantis, and medics popped out their energy blades, holding them low so that everyone could see that they cut through the ground with ease. Finally Naruto came flying down, donning only his pants, hat and his 3 pairs of angel wings pointing out at different angles. As soon as he touched the ground, he spoke, in an amused voice. "See, you should have just surrendered. Now that I have your attention I am going to cut you guys a deal. Personally I don't give a shit about your battle for justice or whatever. I am merely a person who loves interesting things and this battle interests me, so I will allow you to continue in a minute. However, I am here to save Ace since it was a request from a certain orange-haired lady on the crew of Monkey D. Luffy. So with that being said I will take care of Ace's protection during the battle. Now because I don't care about your battle you will do best to view me as a neutral faction, and as long as nothing interests me enough I will stay neutral, just doing whatever I want. Now then carry on." After he finished Naruto snapped his fingers, and a barrier appeared around Ace, then he flew up towards where Sengoku was watching the battle from, and landed sprawled out on a sofa that just appeared out of nowhere, watching the battle with interested eyes. Completely ignoring the nervous glances of Sengoku he announced in a loud voice. "Troops, back into the battleship. Talon, as soon as everyone is inside put up the reflector shields. I don't want the paint to get a scratch during the battle." Toshigi couldn't believe it. Had this supposedly evil guy just saved her life? Even more surprising, she couldn't see any lust in his eyes, which was normally seen in people who would demand payback for their services. Even though she had sworn to vanquish all evil, she didn't think that she could kill him even if he gave her the chance. The aura he gave off inspired awe and his pheromones turned her on. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the person she was supposed to seduce, and she couldn't help but feel lucky that this was her orders, otherwise, she would get punished severely for flirting with pirates. The battle raged on, but it seemed like the pirates were slowly losing the war. Even though Akainu and Aokiji were held up fighting a single enemy, Kizaru was picking up the slack and was downing pirates left and right. He was limiting himself to using pinpoint strikes instead of his usual spree of widespread destruction to make sure he didn't severely injure or kill any of his comrades. The real problem for the pirates, though, was the army of pacifista that had shown up. They were amazingly resistant to damages and their repeated blasts of laser beams were devastating. A major turn in the battle was that Whitebeard was critically wounded, resulting in his ability only working at half its usual power. On the other hand, the Marines were crippled by the loss of their siege wall, which was their ace in the hole should the pirates be too powerful. Eventually the pirates called for a retreat, and the entire fleet left under covering fire from Marco, the only one who could fly after them if he was left behind. Naruto couldn't let them leave without a present, however, so he levitated Ace and flew him towards the retreating ships with superb speeds. He didn't miss the outraged cries of Sengoku that they failed to execute Ace for his crimes. But eventually Sengoku calmed down and looked towards Naruto, who was still standing as he was an hour ago, holding a happy boa in a bridle position, and when he gathered the courage he asked him a question. What are you going to do now, Mr. Uzumaki? Naruto glanced at Sengoku with a contemplative expression on his face, wondering indeed what he would do now. On one hand he still had to get the Straw Hat to the other side of the red line, but on the other hand he really wanted to stay with these two new ladies. After a while of thought he decided that he would do both. He would first get the Straw Hat over the red line, and then he would come back here and stay with the newcomers. It would allow him some time to have his fun with the women on the Straw Hat's crew, as well as give him the opportunity to get something interesting to do. Well, Mr. Sengoku, I believe that I will first get Straw Hat Luffy to the other side of the red line. After that I think I'm going to go to Marijoy for some negotiations. I advise you and the two ladies I just saved to make sure to be there when I do. More importantly, if I were you, I'd inform your Holy Land not to do anything hostile to me if they see me, because I'm going to be flying the Straw Hats over the red line. If anyone fires at my ship, I'll make sure that compared to Marijoy's, this place will look like a children's fight. Now then, I'll take my leave. Naruto set Boa down gently, to her chagrin, and started levitating slowly towards his ship, when suddenly he was stopped by a loud shout of, "Wait!" Turning around slowly to see who said that, he saw Boa with a pleading look in her eyes, her hands clasped together as if she was begging for something. "Please take me with you, Naruto-kun." Sengoku looked at her with a gaping jaw. Was the pirate empress asking a man to take her with him on his journey? It just wasn't possible. Naruto just nodded and floated down for just a moment. He then held her tightly in his arms while floating up again, which caused a soft moan to escape her lips and her blush to rise exponentially. As they neared the ship, a rift opened up in the barrier and they flew into the ship, leaving all the surviving marines gaping in awe as the ship slowly turned around, before accelerating at a frightening pace, allowing them to look at the ship only for 30 more seconds before it had disappeared out of sight. In the ship, after laying Boa down on an unused bed, she immediately fell asleep, tired from the day's fighting and the emotional battle that she had to fight with herself to get this far. Naruto stared at her fondly for a while, before he turned and left the room, leaving her to sleep in peace as he went to look for the Straw Hats. As soon as he turned the corner, he was glommed by two concerned women, who then proceeded to hug him and yell at him respectively. After 5 minutes he was finally let up by the two and looked straight into the happy face of Luffy, who was exuberantly thanking him for saving his brother. It was nothing, besides I got to meet 2 more people who caught my interest. Now for business, people, our previous plan of going to Fishman Island is cancelled. Instead we're going to fly over the red line. I wish to see the Holy Land before I visit it. And speaking of that, I won't be staying with you much longer. Now that I have experienced this world from the side of the pirates, I wish to know what it will be like to live on the other side. So I'll get you to the other side of the red line and then I'll be off. The Straw Hats looked a little disappointed, and Nami and Robin looked very sad that their Naruto was leaving them. But as pirates who go on adventures all the time, they could understand what it was like to want to experience new things regularly. They would just have to make the most of the time they had together. They both thought in unison, an evil gleam shining brightly in their eyes. One that Naruto recognized all too well, and he was secretly grinning on the inside. That gleam usually came before massive amounts of fun. That evening, Robin's room. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.